All right, what is going on? Drive time on a Wednesday afternoon, about 5 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Happy Wednesday to you. You are halfway through that work week. You are one day closer to the weekend, or maybe you're lucky enough to already be off for the holidays. I don't know. But it's another nice day outside, man. I feel like I should be playing golf. Got up to about 52 degrees. Little cloudy, but it was sunny earlier, but as it is every day. It's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That young man is Porter Larson. Beyond the glass today, producing the program on this Wednesday afternoon. One day closer to the CFP weekend, starting on Friday night. Do some college football. On the show today, as you would expect, there are a couple of updates on the University of Utah transfer portal situations, namely additions mostly as of now, that we'll bring to you on the program today. BYU preparing for a game. According to most major outlets, it is the best non-CFP bowl game. Motivating BYU bros everywhere to celebrate that. Probably hang a banner, because that's what they do. Hang a banner for things that aren't real, but ultimately you can kind of make a case for a foul Pac-12 South title. I think they hung a banner at one point because they beat the teams in the Pac-12 South, even though they were an irrelevant G5 program at the time. But they did hang a banner. And BYU Colorado, according to most major outlets, and I certainly agree with it, I think it's going to be a good game. Colorado is going to roll into that game with the defending Heisman Trophy winner in Travis Hunter and the odds-on favorite to be the number one overall pick in Shedeur Sanders. BYU at this point, I think the number is 7 players in the transfer portal. Last check, that's what it was. University of Utah, a little more than that, but the Utes added their 9th player today. We'll tell you who that is, and we'll talk some Utah football on the program. By the way, that BYU-Colorado line, Colorado is a 3-point favorite. Over-under is 54.5. Goodness gracious. So that should be a good one. We'll talk some college football, get you ready for bowl season, get you ready for CFP. And, of course, the latest on the transfer portal, which is top-of-mind awareness this time of year. The Milwaukee Bucks are the champs. Did you watch? I did. I'll admit to it. Milwaukee won the Emirates NBA Cup last night in Vegas, and it was kind of a funny scene. I intentionally watched through the celebration. I'm using air quotes for those of you that are watching on YouTube today. Got my hat flipped backwards. Shout out to my guy, Rye. Shout out to ESPN for doing that investigative journalistic work yesterday. But I intentionally watched through the end of the game to see what the celebration looked like. And after the final buzzer, the players, they didn't know what to do. They're like, hey, do we jump into each other's arms? Do we celebrate at midcourt? Giannis was pumped, but that's what you love about Giannis. That's what you love about Giannis. He's always pumped. One of the most likable NBA superstars, in my opinion, in league history. So Milwaukee gets the win. Giannis gets the MVP. So LeBron last year, Giannis this year. Will that change the way people view the Emirates NBA Cup? The atmosphere was not great. Talked about this yesterday with Zach Harper. We'll discuss it today with an NBA guest that we have. I really think if you want to give this thing some legs, you've got to do something to motivate fans to attend the game. I know that sounds silly, but if it's going to be in Vegas, do something to reward Milwaukee fans, OKC fans. Like, the NBA does a lot of things really well, but when it comes to the way they market themselves, they're somewhat idiotic and almost, I don't know, like lazy, asleep at the wheel when you have all these great opportunities in front of you to maybe do something cool for your fans who the data tells us is tuning out your product. Maybe care about something other than the money occasionally. I guess that's where I'm at right now, not just with basketball, but with the world. Can we just care about something other than money occasionally? I know that you want all your corporate suits there, and it felt very much like a Super Bowl all-star crowd. Corporate suits in Vegas, not a lot of fans there. And so it just didn't feel like anything special. If you want us to care about it, you have to show us you care about it. The Jazz are off until tomorrow, when they're going to take on the Detroit Pistons in the Motor City, Little Caesars Arena. The Pistons are a 4.5-point favorite on that one, so Jazz off tonight. Little hockey action, though. The Utah Hockey Club has been much better as of late. You know, it's interesting. We had a couple of their players on over the course of the past, month or so, and they all kind of said the same thing, that they felt like they were playing really well, but the results weren't necessarily going their way. And if you stick to good habits, at some point you will be rewarded with results. And they've been good as of late. Vancouver in Salt Lake tonight. It's an 8 o'clock drop of the puck, so keep that in mind if you're heading downtown. It's a little bit later than usual. So we'll do some hockey on the show today. Get you ready for the Vancouver Utah Hockey Club game tonight. Talk some big picture NHL. Running Utes men's basketball with an easy win last night. You heard that game on our radio station. We are high speed ahead to Big 12 play for Craig Smith and his Utes. 89-59 against Florida A&M here in Salt Lake. It was not a fair fight because Florida A&M is not a good team. And now Florida A&M is going to head down to Provo to take on BYU. Utes will be back in action coming up on Saturday against Iowa on the Big Ten Network. So that's a game that's worth your time. 4 o'clock on Saturday if you're looking for something to do. The Saturday before Christmas, head on down to that Utah-Iowa game before the Big 12 season begins on New Year's Eve at Baylor. So college basketball, of course, NBA basketball. NFL football, the Atlanta Falcons have elected to make Michael Penix Jr. their starter. They're benching Kirk Cousins. Now, remember, the wailing and gnashing of teeth when the Falcons paid Cousins a grip of money and then used their first-round pick on Michael Penix Jr. Well, maybe this was the plan all along. Cousins, one touchdown, 8 picks over the past 4 or 5 games. He has been really, really bad. But pro football has been a lot of fun. Your Thursday slate, and don't forget we are your home of the NFL here in this market. Your Thursday night game to start Week 16 is the Broncos and the Chargers at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. The Chargers are a 3-point favorite. Justin Herbert questionable in that game. And, of course, a bevy of action ahead, including a triple header on Saturday with the Texans and the Chiefs, the Steelers and the Ravens, and the Rams and the Jets. So a lot to do on the show. A lot of different topics I want to get into today. Busy show with a good guest list on the program. We'll start things off with Dave Bartu, the college football matrix. Yeah, we're getting weird on a Wednesday. Dave covers college football, also hunts bears and sells weed. I don't know how to describe Dave Bartu if you've never listened to him on the show. He's a very smart college football mind, and we're going to bring Dave in today, do a little college football. Latest on the Utah Hockey Club and the landscape of the NHL with Neil Smith, former general manager of the New York Rangers and the New York Islanders. He joins us today. Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune for a little jazz, a little NBA Cup. Little NBA All-Star format change. I know what you guys like, right? You want to talk NBA All-Star format change on this Wednesday. And then Guy Holliday, longtime college football coach, locally, nationally, was with the Utes, spent some time with BYU. Guy's a really entertaining dude. Almost an entertaining guy. Don't want to be redundant, but very smart basketball mind. He's very engaging personality. I've interviewed Guy a handful of times, but excited to have him back on the show today to talk Utah transfer portal, BYU transfer portal, the new reality of college football, and where Guy is at with that today. So Dave Bartu, Neil Smith, Andy Larson, Guy Holliday, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, happy Wednesday. Halfway through that work week and one day close for the weekend. An NBA Cup savant in there with a Utah football. Is that number 84 on the Utah football T-shirt?
It's an old one. It's an old shirt here.
That's like retro. That's like, what do the kids call it these days? Is it vintage? Would that be a vintage Utah football shirt?
I guess, but it's actually from 1984, so it's just old.
Why would you choose a Utah football shirt from 1984?
Listen, if you don't go through the 1984s of Utah football, you don't deserve the 2022s.
Weren't you born in 1995?
Yeah, around there.
You were minus 11 in 1984, and you're bragging about going through the 1984 season?
Yep.
How much NBA Cup did you watch last night?
All of it.
Oh, come on.
I honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do the rest of the year without NBA Cup basketball.
You liar.
I am beside myself with the first day that we don't have the NBA Cup, and I'm just twiddling my thumbs.
Did you watch any of it? I watched the whole thing. I'm not going to lie.
I didn't miss, I don't think, any of the NBA Cup throughout the entirety of the tournament.
So you're just going to keep up this lie, you charlatan, you grifter.
I was so invested in the NBA Cup that I just didn't even realize that the rest of the world had tuned it out.
Yeah, ratings aren't great. And like I said, I watched it because I genuinely was curious, what is this celebration going to look like?
Right.
Are they going to run on the floor? There was a lot of confetti NBA did their job, but not a lot of fans there. And the players were like, do we jump in each other's arms? Doc, like, kind of said we're number one. It was this really weird, I don't know what to do with my hands, Will Ferrell situation after winning the NBA Cup.
And listen, if you're at like basically a corporate conference, which is what the Cup championship in Vegas is, there's no home fans, there's no, like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So, like, I don't know what they expected as far as the environment goes. The only thing that I really learned from the NBA Cup is that the Bucks might be better than their record shows, because the games that they have put incentive on, the NBA Cup, they've won. And I don't know. That's really all I learned from the tournament.
Well, that's more than most. So you're doing better than most NBA fans on this Wednesday. Dave Bartu will be our first guest today to talk college football on this Wednesday afternoon. But before we get to the college football matrix, it's a real thing. On a Wednesday afternoon, courtesy of our good friends, your good friends too, at Standard Restaurant Supply. It's your tailgate headquarters. You get everything you need to make your tailgate epic, okay? Stop by their location at 3500 Southwest Temple or online at standardrestaurant.com. It is time now for your opening tip. All right, we have the CFP brackets beginning to unfold coming up this weekend. Plenty of college football left to play. Unfortunately for the University of Utah, the college football is not including any games because they will not go bowling this year, as we know. So on the BYU side of things, we continue to look ahead to what most outlets believe is the best bowl game, not in the CFP. No BYU. That does not mean you want a trophy. You cannot hang a banner for that. But it should be a fun game. BYU, Colorado. Deion Sanders continues to say his players will play. Travis Hunter just won the Heisman Trophy. Shedeur Sanders is probably going to be a Giant or potentially a Raider. He's probably going to be the number one overall pick. So if you're a BYU fan, you still have a game left to cheer for. You're already a 10-win team. This is going to be one of Kalani's best years. It will go down as that for sure. There really isn't a ton of there's a little bit of intrigue as far as BYU's transfer portal situation. Only 6 or 7 players in the portal. Of course, that could change until you actually have a signature on the dotted line or, the player has pledged to come back. There are questions about everybody until you actually know whether or not they have committed to come back for next year. But BYU has certainly a very exciting bowl game left to talk about. On the University of Utah side of things, there just is no more games, so we continue to focus on the transfer portal, where we're at with the players who have entered and potentially coming back, as we've talked about all week. It's just an important thing to remember as a fan when you get in your feels that when an 18, 19-year-old kid enters the transfer portal and you love the team that he's playing for right now, maybe it's a good idea to, I don't know, not tweet at him. Just going to go ahead and throw that out there. It's an option to not tweet. I don't know if you knew that. That's an option that you always have. Because some of these players who have decided to go see if they can get paid somewhere else will come back to the Utes, namely Isaac Wilson. So 20-plus Utes in the transfer portal. 9 additions have been made so far. And we did get a scheduling update. The 2025 non-con Utah football schedule is out. Porter, do you want to road trip to Laramie, Wyoming? Are you down?
I'm going to be there. I can promise you that. And I have proof of this. When they released that game, that's the one that I've been most excited about for a long time. I'll be there.
You are one of one, young man, in that area, in that stratosphere. That makes you truly a unique individual, because I will tell you what, I'm going to tap out on that one.
Come on. What do I got to do to get you to Laramie?
I've been to, I think, 3 Utah football games in Laramie, 1 BYU football game in Laramie. I have relatives in Evanston. Don't look at me like I'm some sort of hoity-toity snob. I have spent time and sweat equity in Wyoming, and I don't need to see it again. I've seen it. I'm good. I'm chilling at home, but we're sending you. You're going on the road.
I'll be there. I'll be there with boots on, and I'll be happy about it.
So the opener is going to be UCLA at the Rose Bowl. Then there's a home game against Cal Poly before hitting the road against Wyoming and Laramie. Truly, Porter, takeaways now that we know, the 3 non-con games.
Yeah, Laramie fun. I'm curious if Cam Rising will be back for UCLA.
What What is wrong? Are you day drinking? Did you take an edible before the show?
No, I just thought that was, it was funny to see UCLA on there as a non-conference game. And that just, going into the season, that is going to still be the topic, is the quarterback room.
Yeah, but we're not going to be doing Is Cam going to be back for UCLA? We're not doing that.
I just had to throw that in there.
Are you sure you didn't take a massive edible right before you went on air? This first segment has been a little bit odd for you.
No.
Okay, all right.
Not sure. This is my Friday, by the way. I didn't tell you that. I'm out tomorrow.
You're not working tomorrow?
No.
And you chose to
Olivia's in here.
So you did take an edible before the...
No, but it is my Friday, so I'm loose. I'm having fun.
I got it from here. Never mind about your takeaways from the schedule. We will not be doing Will Cam Rising me back for UCLA. We might be talking about whether or not, the starting quarterback is dialed into place, but we don't know what that's going to look like. But at least there is some news, because for Utah football as of now, the only thing you have is to talk about the offseason. That's what you have. So, I do get a kick out of, I really hope Utah football does not become the program where the best part of the year is the offseason, because that's when there's hope. As a Jets fan, the best part of your calendar year is the offseason, because you might have a good draft pick, you might bring in a good player. And I see all of this like momentum for the Utes right now. How do you even know? We have no idea whether or not this is actually a good thing. But 9 players have signed on the dotted line via the transfer portal. And we'll talk about these players throughout the course of the radio show today to try to understand whether or not next year could look a little bit different. Of course, it's going to be a brand new offensive attack. It's going to be a new quarterback. Looks like it's going to be a new running back. And this is going to be the deal. It's a tough part of college football where you're forced to rebuild every single year. In the pros, you kind of know when the rebuild is coming. You prepare yourself for it. Right now, most of these programs, including the University of Utah, have to rebuild every single year. And so that's what this offseason is about, and maybe a rebuild in a way that we really haven't even seen before, because it does feel like so many things are going to be brand new for the Utes. So college football landscape, plenty of games still left to be played. Kind of a fun in-state battle situation. Indiana, Notre Dame will be the first game coming up on Friday. There's a Saturday triple header, and, of course, the bowl season will roll along. And we'll see how this expanded 12-team CFP lands with people. I would imagine the ratings are going to be through the roof. And then, obviously, bowl season, top of mind of awareness as well. So Dave Bartu is going to be our first guest right out of the gates. We'll do some college football with Dave. Move over to Neil Smith for some Utah Hockey Club. Andy Larson for a little Utah Jazz. And more college football with Guy Holiday on a Wednesday drive. So keep it right here. Don't go anywhere. Interesting piece out today from Sports Media Watch discussing the declining TV ratings of pretty much every sport across the board, including the NFL. But some important context we'll get to because we talked a lot about being an NBA market. We've talked a lot about the massive decline in NBA ratings and what it means. And from a local standpoint, I don't blame you for not watching this basketball team, believe me. But a lot of insight here I want to get to. We're going to bring in Andy Larson coming up in a bit. We'll do some hockey today with Neil Smith, but we'll start things off with some college football. I never know where our next guest is, so I just ask him straight up. Dave Bartu, where are you right now, and what are you doing?
Dude, I'm in the kitchen right now, man. It's Christmas cookie time. It's go time. So phone is on speaker, and it's a week full of Christmas cookies for the family and coaching carousel.
So are you yourself making these cookies? Of course, that's the question.
Oh yeah. My wife's at work right now, so this is I get a few, but we end up between her and me. There's about, I think the list, it's like a draft board, dude. It's like 15 different kinds of cookies and 6 of each, and they go everywhere. Even some of my head coach clients are like, "Hey, can I get a box of those?" Those go out as well. So it's been a long time tradition baking a lot of cookies at the house come this time of year.
Okay. Very cool, Dave. Very cool. Since it's been a minute since you and I last spoke, Dave, our college football situation in Salt Lake did not go the way we thought it would. As the University of Utah was the favorite to win the Big 12 in Vegas, they were picked by the media to win the Big 12 and stumbled this year to a 2-7 conference record, 5-7 overall. Let's start from a 30,000-foot view as a guy that likes Coach Witt an awful lot. How stunned are you at where we find ourselves with Utah football after year one in the Big 12?
That was a stinker, wasn't it?
Sure was.
Well, stumbled is Latin for something way worse than what I call stumble, right? Hey, you know something? It's college football. That's why we play the games, right? I mean, seriously, it's terrible when you're on the bad end of it, like this. But with the college, it's a roller coaster. It is hard to stay on top every single time. And what causes a cataclysmic avalanche like this, I have no idea, right? Nobody could have seen this coming. So you just hit the restart button, right? Is it still a very, very good program? Yes. Is it still well coached? Yes. And I just see this as a giant anomaly on Whittingham's career, but these things happen, and I can't explain it. All we can do is look forward and go, okay, what's the schedule next year? What talent do we have? Are we making any coaching changes? And are those guys any good coming in?
And the answer to that, as far as the coaching changes, is yes. And we'll get to the new offensive coordinator in a moment. But the biggest piece of news is that Coach Witt is back. I mean, there was a ton of conjecture, conversation, rumor that this was it for Kyle. And I have no idea whether or not the underwhelming nature of this season added to his desire to come back. But, for our listeners that don't know, your main gig with college football really does involve coaches, and you've always been very high on Coach Witt. And just wanted to get your thoughts on Kyle coming back for year 21.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's for those of the listening out there that don't know what I do for a paycheck. We do analytics and recruiting and staff building for college football, NFL, FCS, UFL. We simply try to reduce risk in talent acquisition, performance, and pay. So when I'm looking at Kyle Whittingham or Scally or Beck or any of these guys, it is through the eyes of their performance relative to all their other peers. So with Witt coming back, I don't know. If we're going to take it over, I'd be like, okay, we're turning over the new leaf. He gets to start at the bottom, so expectations are low. So, either way, I think you win as a program and as a coaching staff. I'd probably like to have Kyle come back. I wouldn't want him to leave on that note. I'm sure he doesn't want to leave on that note. So having that stability and coaching continuity in the program, I can't see it how it's not going to do anything but help.
And ultimately, to your point, if Coach Witt left and they elevated Morgan, which is the plan, Morgan will take over, they would have replaced every single major coach, offensive coordinator, head coach, defensive coordinator. So with Kyle coming back, you do avoid that. But what are your thoughts? And I've asked you before, but radio's not linear, Dave, as you know, on this succession plan in place. After Kyle steps aside, Morgan slides over a seat, and he will be the guy whenever that time comes.
Well, when it comes to head coaching changes, a lot of it is just timing. It's like the draft. Do you get lucky or not? Who's available when it comes up? And when it comes down to coaching hires, there's from our standpoint, we like reduced risk, right? And so if we had a choice, we would like our ADs to hire a proven head coach that has done well somewhere so that we have the numbers on him. But if you're not going to go that direction, then get me a guy with an elite ceiling. Offense, defense, I don't care, right? I mean, look at our playoffs. In my scoring efficiency, 9 of the top 12 in defensive scoring efficiency are in the bracket. Defensive football is going to win this title. And so a lot of people get caught up in that, well, we need the elite offensive coordinator. No, you don't. You need a good elite coordinator, period. And so Morgan has obviously proved time and time again he has an elite ceiling defensively. So when he comes in, you would expect the defense to be able to continue under his tutelage. The big question mark is going to be the offense. And after this year, well, everybody's going to look good next year.
For sure, for sure. That does lead me to, well, actually, you know what? Let's start here, Dave, because last year, nothing was going well. And you can certainly be as reductive as saying it all had to do with the lack of health at the quarterback position and yet another catastrophic injury to Cameron Rising. But Andy Ludwig is the one who fell on the sword, and I didn't think it was all that fair. Mike Bajakian takes over the play calling situation, and Mike, when he had his first media availability himself, said, this is Andy Ludwig's system. I'm just calling the plays. And so for me, it's like, well, what is Mike going to be able to do that Andy couldn't do in his own system? And the answer turned out to be nothing. But so give me your thoughts on the decision to move on from Andy before we get to the new offensive coordinator and your thoughts there.
Yeah, it's like that scene in National Treasure at the end. Somebody's got to go to prison.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you got a bad offense, you got a bad defense, somebody's got to get fired. Right? We got to have a bloodletting. We got to have human sacrifice to appease the boosters and the fans. And that was Andy, right? And there was no doubt about it from an offensive standpoint, easily one of the bottom 5 in the entire country, Power 4-wise this year. So, but overall for his career, I would still take Andy instead of Mike. Right? I mean, if we were starting from scratch, you said, okay, Dave, you got to pick offensive coordinator. These are the two guys. I will take Andy over Mike. But, that being said, there was no fixing it this year. And again, going back to when things start to tumble, there's no rhyme or reason for it. It's probably more emotional and injury and psychological driven than anything. Now Andy's gone, Page is turning, and you got a new guy coming.
So that leads me to giving you the space for our listeners to give us your thoughts on Jason Beck. According to reports, Dave, this was kind of the third option for Utah. First went to Oklahoma, second went to Texas Tech, third landed here in Salt Lake. He's a former BYU player. Brings his quarterback with him in Devin Dampier. So what's the Dave Bartu take on this new OC QB duo for Utah football?
Well, we like the risk, right? Like I talked about before, performance risk, salary risk. What's the upside on this guy? So he's only been calling plays for 2 years. So in our system, he's not fully graded out. Okay, you got to have 4 years. But in our system, he is labeled a rising star. He is one of the top 5 second-year offensive coordinators in all of college football. So bringing that with him, plus his quarterback, you and I both know, we all know it's quarterback-driven. The league above and the league below, everything runs through that quarterback. So the fact that you have both guys is solid, but getting back, I think that is a really good risk. We still don't know what the downside is to him because both of his years have been progressive. He is a high-arcing, high-ceiling kind of guy. The question is when he hits that 4, when he has the bad year, we still don't know. That's kind of the risk. How far down will it go? But overall, I think the risk is pretty solid for Utah.
What does your model and your experience say about, the sometimes difficult jump from, the G5 situation to the P4 situation, a school like New Mexico to a school like Utah, from a play caller and a quarterback standpoint, because that's what Utah's banking on. New Mexico was the 4th-ranked offense in college football last year as far as yardage per game goes, but it was in a, lesser conference. Now the competition's better. What are some of the key dynamics, the secret sauce that make coaches and quarterbacks that make this jump successful next level?
Well, I agree with you. That's why it's always risk, right? We don't know what he's going to be able to do in the Big 12 relative to what he did in New Mexico. I always try to gravitate towards what did he do relative to the defenses he faced, right? Relative to the talent that he had faced overall. And so at New Mexico, Beck was 44th in defense-adjusted talent in terms of what he did out there. So I know, like you said, the yards are huge, but when you look at the scoring relative to the defense, I would say it's a little bit lower. But again, it's New Mexico. You're talking bottom 10 talent profile in the country. Anything done at New Mexico should be, should be really happy about that. So we don't have an exact number to say this guy at this level is now going to produce this at this level. He may be better at Utah. He may be better because he has better players and a better offensive line and better running back. I don't think you can simply say just because he did X at New Mexico, it automatically transfers to a certain level at Utah. I think you have to take a risk on what he has done relative to the talent. And for 2 years at New Mexico, he has drastically elevated that offense. They may not be elite numbers, but folks, look at where New Mexico was before he got there. And look what he did for 2 years. And then the big thing to look at is, this is what we always see in the data, we'll look at New Mexico next year and see where it goes. That's going to be part of our evaluation too, is how much impact did he have before, during, and after.
So there's been quite a bit of coaching news in the state, Dave, and Bronco Mendenhall once upon a time was tasked with turning Brigham Young around, and he did. He was tasked with turning UVA around, and he did. And he didn't stick in New Mexico for very long, but did a pretty good job down there. So it's been a chaotic year and a half up in Logan for Utah State in that football program as Blake Anderson lost his job. Nate Dreiling, who was hired as the defensive coordinator, took over as the head coach, and you kind of felt bad for Nate because he's a bright young guy, but he had no shot to do anything this year. Bronco Mendenhall is now being asked to do in Logan what he did in Provo and what he did in Virginia. What's the Dave Bartu take on Bronco Mendenhall to Utah State?
I think it's a great safe hire. Bronco in our system, 3.5-star head coach. Like you said, he was solid at BYU. He was about +1 game a year. So whatever you felt your talent would, 6-6, he was a 7-5 guy. 7-5, he's an 8-4 guy. So he coached above the talent at all the stops. Even in New Mexico, he turned it around really well in 1 year. So from a safety standpoint, I like the risk for the athletic director. I like it for the program. He's a veteran. And that program needs, obviously, some retooling because this was just a lost year entirely. So I think it was probably best risk available. When you account for everything, who you could get, the money you could pay, the quality of guy, the situation of the program. And this program has produced some wonderful seasons in the past years. It has elevated a lot of guys. So the potential of the program, all of that, I think the AD made a fantastic hire in terms of best available overall guy for the situation.
So the irony of where we find ourselves, Dave, here in the state, is that everything that we thought Utah would be this year, BYU turned out to be that team. They put themselves really in the mix to win the Big 12. At one point after that 9-0 start, they were the favorite to win the Big 12, but they stumbled down the stretch, losing 2 of 3. Still a really good year, 10-2 overall, 7-2 in conference, and they're going to get the Alamo Bowl. Colorado is the opponent. I think that's going to be one of the more intriguing non-CFP bowl games. But you, a number of years ago on this show, were really high on Kalani before a lot of people were high on him the way that they are now. And given time, you've proven to be correct. What do you make of what you saw down in Provo with BYU having the season that Utah thought they would have?
I remember preseason. I was on the radio, BYU radio, And there was people that were like, there was a lot of BYU fans saying we need to retool the staff. And I'm like, you guys are a bunch of idiots. This is a top 30 staff in college football. You are not getting any better than this at BYU. You're not. And you're in a coaches conference. So the entire situation for BYU, I felt going into this year. Now, did I expect them to win 10 games? Oh, heck no. No. But I expected them to be 2 to 3 games above their win total expectation. I expected an 8-win team, maybe a 9-win team, not what they did. But that staff is also very, very good. And so, again, a little bit surprised what happened. But then if you look at the whole Big 12, most of it revolved around coaching. You had excellent coaching at Colorado, surprising. I mean, I don't know how much it was coaching because Peter Sanders made Pat Shermer look good, and so he should just get the Heisman for that alone. Nobody's ever done that. And you had good coaching at K-State. You had surprising coaching at Arizona State. So, as far as I'm concerned, BYU is sitting just fine and just keep the ship going in the same direction.
What do you make of the way Kenny Dillingham has been able to turn things down around there after Herm Edwards left him as Led Zeppelin after-party type mess? I mean, it's pretty impressive in just a couple of seasons to see ASU in the CFP representing the Big 12. I've never asked you about Kenny. What do you think, Dave?
It's surreal to me, because, if you'd asked me about Kenny before, it was, when he got hired, obviously he's got no head coaching experience, so I don't have a feel on him. He put up one elite year as an offensive coordinator at Oregon, so you have an asterisk there. He came into Arizona State pretty depleted on talent. The defensive coordinator, Brian Ward, 3.5-star guy, nothing special there. He brings in Marcus Arroyo, 2.5-star guy, certainly nothing special there. And it all came together. So he must be a phenomenal culture guy somehow. Maybe they just caught lightning in a bottle. I don't think we should get too far over our skis, but celebrate the year in general. I think my biggest takeaway right now is when I see something like this, a team winning so far above expectations, having the offense performing where it's at, having an offensive coordinator with the career grade he has, Sam Levitt should be being called by every NFL agent right now because that guy drove the bus.
Yeah, he did. Let's stick in the conference. Another quarterback coach combo I want to talk to you about. And I honestly don't recall what you told me about Dion when the hire was made. And maybe because there wasn't a ton of P4 data, you weren't sure how that was going to go. And look, of course, the Dion effect is a real thing. We all have experienced it both in the Pac-12 and the Big 12 here in Salt Lake. And ultimately, I think there were questions early on, but I think it's really time to tip your cap to what Deion Sanders has done in Boulder over the course of just a couple of short seasons, turning a program that was irrelevant into something that most people pay attention to, whether you love it or not, with the landscape of college football. And also looks like his boy is going to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. So the Dave Bartu take on the quarterback coaching combo in Boulder, Deion and Shedeur Sanders.
Again, it's like Arizona State. It's amazing. Now, Dion, coming out of Jackson State, we had him at a 3.5-star grade. He'd only been there 2 years, so we had him as a rising star head coach. So he was good at staffing, pretty good staffing. He was very good at results. And one of my big questions, though, is how much of this is Shedeur-driven, right? I think we all have that question. Is this going to be replicable next year without that quarterback? Probably not, because Shermer is not a good offensive coordinator. If you look at his history in the NFL, I have him in the bottom 20 of all offensive coordinators since 2000. So it wasn't that. I think it was quarterback-driven. I think the one big mystery and the amazing hire that nobody talks about because it's always Sanders, it's always Hunter, it's always Prime, is their defensive coordinator, Livingston. He'd never been a defensive coordinator before. He wasn't in our system. And he put up a top 20 scoring efficiency defense this year. While everybody focuses on everything else, that was the single most amazing, unpredictable part of Colorado. We knew what Prime would do. We knew what Shedeur would do. No idea the defense would do what it did. And Livingston, for everybody out there that don't know who he is, Just put a little circle around that guy because the data is saying this guy could be really good if he can keep up this arc.
I continue to chuckle when I'm reminded that the most popular preseason Big 12 championship game pick was Utah versus Oklahoma State, and the two teams combined to go 2-16 in conference. What happened with Mike Gundy? He is coming back. They did not win a conference game, and they never lose at home, and they couldn't win at home this year. How did it go so wrong, Dave, in Stillwater?
To me, well, who knows what the external intangible effects were. But I don't know if I said it on this show, but I said it on every show that I went on to talking about Oklahoma State and the Big 12. That was by far, the worst offensive-defensive coordinator pairing in the Big 12 to start the season. By far. Dunn and Nardo were both bottom 10 coordinators in the FBS. I'm talking UMass, Akron, MAC teams, Jacksonville State, you name it, bottom 10 on both of them. So Gundy has, even when he was top 20, I think, weren't they like 9-3 in top 25 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
It was still, if you look at the numbers, you would go, how did he do that? They were not good on offense. They were not good on defense. They must have won a ton of one-score games in the final seconds, a ton of them. And so I think it was kind of a false positive that we saw in 2023. 2024 showed us exactly what that staff was, which is the worst staff in the Big 12. So that one was zero surprise at all, other than losing so many games by Gundy. But from a staff standpoint, no shock here.
So I know you don't have a lot of data on let me check the name here, the new North Carolina head coach, not a college guy. We don't know much about him. Bill Belichick to college football. I've got a couple things here. How do you think this works? And is this the beginning? I'm not going to say an exodus, but the beginning of a trend because of the model now moving towards a professional model, inevitably, whether you like it or not. Do you think we'll see other, former NFL guys taking college jobs? And what do you make of Belichick to Carolina?
Well, we might see former NFL guys going into college. But the first thing is the NFL's got to turn that former guy down at all of his job tries, all the interviews he did. And believe me, North Carolina was not the only team he tried to pitch his 400-page manifesto to. There was a bunch of people that was thrown at. And even at North Carolina, my understanding, the AD didn't even want it. He wanted Jen Summerall. And Chairman Board of Trustees got sold on the whole thing, and that's where we're at. So my concern is not everybody in North Carolina is on board with this idea. And if everybody is not in support of an idea, it will never be maximized. So I don't positive, negative. I mean, it's going to bring a ton of attention to the brand. It's going to bring a ton of attention to the program. Bill, all he's got to do is go 500 at the basketball school. I mean, obviously, they let Max sit there and lose a jillion games over the last half decade. Didn't care about it. They was worried about basketball season. So it's a great place to experiment. But as far as trying to prognosticate what's going to happen, I think that one's really difficult. I'm going to have to see more of the staffing as well.
Gus Malzahn bounces for FSU. Scott Frost is back at UCF, and he taps Alex Grinch to be his DC. A sentence that I didn't think I'd be able to say ever again. How does our guy continue to keep a job? I mean, look, I'm not, go support your family. Congratulations on the gig. But from my uneducated eye, Dave, the Alex Grinch experience on defense doesn't seem to be very beneficial for the team who employs him. But what do you make of that hire? Came down yesterday.
I'm shocked, flat out shocked, for reasons I can't even tell you why. I'm flat out shocked that was the decision. But Alex Grinch, look, like I said, in our database, we have every coach since 2010 in our database. We have over 1,100 defensive coordinators in our database. Alex Grinch is 521st.
Oof.
521st. His real market value is $309,000 a year in the Big 12. He is the worst defensive coordinator in the Big 12 right now, basically replacing Nardo at Oklahoma State. He's probably going to get paid 3 times his value. I got nothing on that one. I have no idea other than Scott and Alex must be really good buddies. That's it.
Relationship business. Last one. Michael Vick is going to try his hand at coaching at Norfolk State. What do you make out of this good look?
Oh, You know something? I'm not going to do because when Deion went to Jackson State, I poo-pooed the heck out of it. I'm like, no way, not going to work, not a chance. That guy, no, And again, with no data, I start popping off and sound stupid. So I'm not going to pop off about Michael Vick. Let's just see what he can recruit. Let's see how he staffs. See what happens there. But the cool thing is we're talking about it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the best benefit that he brings right now is it's a good conversation, and we'll just have to see where it goes because Deion taught us, let's not be too judgmental about NFL superstars trying to be head coaches.
No doubt. All right, Dave, I'll let you get back to making those cookies. I appreciate your time, man. Happy holidays. Have a good one. All right.
Thank you, Spencer. Take it easy, man.
Dave Bartu, the College Football Matrix, does a really good job analyzing college football coaching staffs, does a lot on the recruiting side as well. At CFB Matrix is where you find him. It looks like he's baking coffee cakes and chocolate chip cookies right now for all of his clients. So appreciate Dave's time. All right, stay tuned because we're going to switch gears and do a little hockey. The Utah Hockey Club takes on the Canucks tonight. Neil Smith will join us. Then it's Andy Larson and Guy Holliday on a Wednesday show. Going to bring in Andy Larson today. We'll do a little Utah Jazz, a little NBA with Andy. NBA Emirates Cup wrapped up last night in Vegas. Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks took the trophy home, and then Guy Holiday will stop by, who was a longtime college football coach here in the market, elsewhere nationally as well. So we'll get back to college football in a moment. How about the red-hot Utah Hockey Club in action tonight against the Canucks? The Utah Hockey Club has won 6 straight road games and 4 of 5 overall. Our next guest joins us on a weekly basis to talk Utah Hockey Club and NHL Pro Hockey in general, the great Neil Smith on a Wednesday. Happy holidays, Neil. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, Spence. How are you?
We're good out here, and this young team has really turned it around since you and I last spoke, and I'll give you credit because you pointed out that they were playing well, and sometimes the cruel reality of any sport is you can be playing well and the results just don't go your way for whatever reason. But if you continue to work and put in good habits and make sure that you're taking care of what you need to every day, hopefully the results will come. And as of late, they have 6 straight road wins. Neil, what do you make of that?
Well, what I really like is they got nine out of the last possible 10 points.
Yeah.
So, beat San Jose, beat Colorado, lost in a shootout to Minnesota Wild, and then we have already talked about this last week, but went in and played back-to-back games with Buffalo and then Philly and won both of those. So they got to have a happy locker room now, a locker room that's pulling all together. Vemelka's playing well in goal right now, and you know what? It's going to be an interesting matchup tonight because the Vancouver Canucks are struggling for who they are, but they will be a good barometer, another good test for Utah.
I do want to get to tonight in a moment, but now, Neil, that we have a good sample size, we're high speed ahead to Christmas. We've got, essentially most teams have played close to 30 games, if not a little bit more than that, depending on, exactly which team you look at. The Devils are probably leading the league at 34. They are, and then there are a couple of teams down at 29, but 30 games in for the Utah Hockey Club. What would you say to the fans out here that love to watch this team about who you feel they are? Like when they're winning, they do what well, and when they're losing, they're not doing certain things the way they need to. We have to have enough of a data size and a sample size to kind of know who this team is now, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I think that they're a very good offensive team, and they're pretty decent defensively. And when you look at the stats that can back that up, it's that they've scored 91 goals and only allowed 88, and that's an important stat. Even though they're sitting where they're sitting behind the wild card race, they're a plus team. And if you look above them, the Colorado Avalanche is a minus team, and all the teams below them, of course, are a minus team. It's really important. It shows that they're playing well defensively. There was a spell there when you and I were talking, and they weren't scoring the goals. Gunther had scored in the first game, and had gone a lot of games without scoring. Keller wasn't being as consistent, on and on. And they have gotten that. They picked that up. Gunther's gotten that 3 goals and 5 assists in his last 5 games. And Cooley has 6 points. Keller has 6 points. Even the defenseman Sergachev has 6 points, and this is all in the last 5 games. So when that offense gets going, they're winning games, and I think that's what you've got here. You've got a young, gifted offensively team that if they can stay disciplined and stay out of the penalty box, we've talked about that, and stay disciplined defensively like they've been doing, they get a shot.
I want to ask you about Gunther, follow up about Gunther, who as of now, he's only 21, and he leads the Utah Hockey Club in both points and goals. He has 29 points. He has 13 goals. He's a second-line forward, as you referenced, scored 3 times in 2 games during the most recent road trip, and has 12 points over the last 10 games. I think a lot of people honed in on Clayton Keller because he is such a bright young star, but Gunther has impressed a lot of people. What type of player is he? Is there somebody he reminds you of at the age of 21? How good do you think this young kid can be if he keeps putting in the work?
I think he can be a pretty elite scorer. Like he's got a heck of a shot, and that's one thing you notice right away with him is that he can really shoot the puck and shoot it quickly. It's one thing to have a hard shot, but if it takes you too long, NHL goalies get set up quick. But this guy, he's as you said, he's only 21 out of Edmonton, Alberta, and he can get a quick release, and I think he's gonna continue to just get better and better as timing and strength and things happen to him as he gets into his mid-20s.
All right, let's get a little deep in the weeds here, Neil. Most NHL players, from what I've read, use a flex rating between 85 and 100. Gunther's flex rating is 77. What does that mean?
I think that means it's a little bit more whippy, or it's not whippy at all. I don't know how they use that, because in my day they were only worried about the lie of the stick, but that has to do with how much whippiness is in the shaft of the stick and how flexible it is or not. Some players like to get a lot of flex. Think of it as like a bow and arrow, and how much you can pull back on the string on the bow to be able to take your shot. It's the same thing with a hockey stick. How much do you want to bend into it before you snap it off? And whatever Gunther's is, it's working for him.
Sounds like a Seinfeld episode. You can never have enough whippiness in a hockey stick, right? It sounds like a Seinfeld episode.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
You referenced Vejmelka, the second choice goalie to start the year, but has become the starting goaltender after Connor Ingram went down with this upper body injury. But Connor's now cleared to train, cleared to come back, and I'm not sure how long it will be until Connor's ready to roll. But Utah Hockey Club, I think it's 8-4-1 since Vejmelka assumed the number one, and his backup Jackson Stauber came in and had a couple of good showings as well. But Connor is the guy who was signed to the contract to be the number one goalie. What do you think happens, Neil, when Connor comes back with the Vejmelka playing the way he's played over the past month or so?
I'm sure that the coach will fit him in and give him an opportunity. When the goalie coach and Connor think he's ready to go, they're not going to hand him the number one job. Vejmelka's played too well for them. His numbers are too good. I mean, he's only let in 4 goals in the last 2 wins that they had. And Ingram hasn't played since November 18th, so that's a month now since he last played. So, you know what? You're right. This season started with Ingram as the guy who was going to be the number one. Vejmelka was going to be number 2, but it's really good on Armstrong and his staff that they've got a backup goalie that can jump up and be a number one. I mean, that's something that teams would love to have, that because what you want out of your backup is a chance to win. Well, Vejmelka's giving you more than a chance to win. He's holding the fort while Ingram's been out, and he might be able to take the fort over and be the number one guy.
So for a young team like this, and I know it's different in hockey juxtaposed to pro basketball. I think home court advantage in basketball, and there's data with this, it is a little bit more apparent and obvious with results going towards the home team than it is in hockey. But for a young team to go on the road and rip 6 straight wins, Neil, what does that say to you about, the ability they have to kind of focus away from home with a roster that is as young as they are?
You know what it tells me is that they like each other, believe it or not, Spence. That's what I get out of that, is that they're a cohesive group. They like each other, and they got a good room. And by good room, I mean that they're happy to be there. They're ready to go. They're fired up, and they're all pulling in the same direction, quite obviously. And sometimes when you play on the road, believe it or not, it's easier than when you play at home, because there's just 23 players, the trainers, and the coaches. That's it in that whole building holding 20,000 people. It's just you against the world. And you know what? It's quite a challenge every night. You come out to that hostility that is backing the home team, and you're the David that wants to beat the Goliath, and it's fun. And it seems to me like this group is having a lot of fun together.
Yeah, and you can tell with some of the media they're doing that they're so relieved to see the results go their way, because I think I talked to you about this. We had a couple of their players on the program and people that cover the team, and during the stretch where they just couldn't find points or wins, everybody involved with the team still liked what they were doing, right? And so it is a matter of continuing the habits day to day. But I would imagine, Neil, for a young team, it probably does get difficult if you're not rewarded with results for your endeavors. What sort of challenge is it, fundamentally from an organizational standpoint to make sure you're doing the right things day to day, even though at times the results aren't going your way?
Well, that's up to that's what coaches are there for. They're there to make sure that they keep you, all pulling in the same direction, even though sometimes you're not going to win the games, and sometimes you feel like you've been 3 or 4 without a win. It's up to the coaches to keep you mentally focused and in a place that you are going to get there, and just keep doing. Just stay to the system, stick to the system. Don't lose your cool. Don't do anything like that. And that's a big role of the coaches to make sure that those players they stay focused.
Wanted to tap in with your experience of building Stanley Cup winning rosters, because one of the things we did this yesterday on the show with the Jazz right now being so bad and not even close to being any good at all, we were trying to come up with examples in the NBA of teams who 3, 4, 5 years ago were in the spot the Jazz are in, and now 3, 4, 5 years later have completed their rebuild and now have a really exciting team. A team like the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team like the Orlando Magic, other examples as well. And I'm not versed enough in the current landscape of pro hockey to give our hockey fans an example of a team that was where the Utah Hockey Club is now and now are good 4 or 5 years later is like an example of what a rebuild looks like. I wonder if there are a couple of current clubs in pro hockey that Utah Hockey Club fans can look at as maybe some hope to where their team could be if everything goes well in 2, 3, 4 years.
I think there's a number of different teams you can look at that have rebuilt their team. I mean, in a very easy one, Minnesota Wild this year, who missed the playoffs last year, are one of the strongest teams in the league, and that's only a 1-year thing. And I know you're talking about a rebuild. If you look at Vancouver, they went from missing the playoffs. That's probably the best example I can give you. Vancouver had a phenomenal year last year, ending first in the Pacific, after missing the playoffs for a number of years before that. And it was a slow build for them, and they had a lot of young players and prospects, and then it finally started to click all together when they got guys like Quinn Hughes, who you're going to see tonight, who's a phenomenal offensive defenseman, and in fact over a point a game. But they started to get guys like that, and it all started to come together. J.T. Miller on Vancouver, who people thought Vancouver was crazy to give him such a long contract. He's one of their best players. So you know what? It does take time, but it all comes together because it's just a maturation process of slowly getting there. And Arizona/Utah has been building this thing for a while now under Bill Armstrong. And as I said, I just want to remind everybody when we first started talking, I thought Utah would be right where they are, and that is in the mix to try to grab a wild card spot, and they're doing that.
All right, let's dig into Vancouver. They are in town tonight, 16-9-5, 37 points, according to the ESPN playoff FPI, whatever the hell that is, Neil. 79.1% chance of making the postseason. I'm going to be honest. I was looking at their stats, and because Quinn Hughes has like 35 points, I didn't know he was a defenseman, but he is. And a lot of people think he is a legitimate MVP contender for what he's done for Vancouver. So let's get a preview. Utah Hockey Club, Vancouver Canucks tonight in Salt Lake. What do you think? How do you think it goes down? What should we know about this club?
Well, you should keep an eye on 43 on defense, the captain. That's Quinn Hughes. You talked about him. Marvelous hands and marvelous vision and great offensive instincts. And then up front, J.T. Miller, number 9 on Vancouver, is 19 points in 20 games. He just came back from missing 10 games for personal reasons. I don't know what those reasons are, but obviously there was something going on in his life. And then a fellow that they just signed from the Boston Bruins this summer, Jake DeBrusk. He's got 14 goals this season and is doing really well with the Canucks. On top of all that, Thatcher Demko, who went out right before the playoffs last year, he's the goaltender who had such a marvelous season to get them to first place and then was gone in the playoffs. He just came back, so he's played 3 games. He's won 1-1, and he's going to play tonight against Vejmelka. So that'll be an interesting matchup. But Vancouver's trying to get their skis back under them, if you know what I mean. They're not as good this year as they were last year. and they're trying to find their way. And they actually, Rick Tocchet, the head coach of Vancouver, gave them a bit of a tongue lashing after a recent game, saying that some of their top players aren't emotionally invested quickly enough in a game, and that they need to get more emotionally invested. So we'll see if they do that tonight.
All right. I'm honestly asking because I want to harken back to my youth. I have not watched my New York Rangers much this year because there's been a lot to consume for this job. But, they're still in a fine spot. But is it fair to say that, and we talked about the situation with, I think it was Trouba, who they traded and how bad that was for kind of the look of the club. Chris Drury, former Trumbull Little League World Series star before going on to play professional hockey as the GM, the spot that you filled for a long, long time. But is it fair to say that they have not lived up to the expectations after a really good year last year, Neil?
Yeah, it is. It is, absolutely. If that's with a wide stroke brush. But I mean, the problem is that there's a lot of friendly fire that's hit the wrong places in New York. I mean, with the way things have been handled, and the players are in a free fall right now. They lost last night to Nashville 2-0, and as you know, Nashville's having a horrible season. They're in dead last in the Western Conference. So the Rangers continue to just not be able to put things together. And this is with Shesterkin in net, who just got a contract of $11.25 million per year going forward. I don't know what they're going to do next. They've already ran the captain out of town. They've threatened to trade a lot of players. But there's really just no emotion in their game. There's no, they're just lost when you watch them play. And it is a real free fall for them at the current time. And I don't even know what they could do to stop it. I'm not saying they won't stop it. I'm saying I don't know what they could do to stop it.
All right, Neil, before I set you loose, according to the power rankings that I have up in front of me, written earlier today by Arda Okal from ESPN. I think that's how you say the name. 2 of the top 3 teams in pro hockey exist in the same division that the Utah Hockey Club do in Winnipeg and Minnesota. Which of those 2 do you think is better? If you had to choose one, there are 2 of the top 3 teams in these power rankings. Who's the better side, Winnipeg or Minnesota? Winnipeg is ahead of them in the standings right now.
Yeah, I think Winnipeg's, got everything that you would want, and they're horribly tough to win in their building. They're 11-3-1. They had this phenomenal start in the first 15 games, and that's really put them where they can put it on cruise control. Minnesota Wild has had just a phenomenal year so far. I never saw this coming. I don't think anybody did. But I think at the end of the day, I mean, if you had to say one or the other, I would say Winnipeg is the tougher team right now, and they seem to be. They got Connor Hellebuck in net, who's a huge part. He won the Vezina last year, probably the top guy to get the Vezina again this year. So I'd say Winnipeg's the team right now that's the best.
All right, Neil, before I set you loose, for our hockey fans out there looking for more content, where can they find that great podcast of yours?
Well, excuse me, we just had a great interview with the general manager Chris McFarland of Colorado Avalanche. That's on right now on all the different platforms. That was really interesting, talking about the Colorado Avalanche and their goaltending moves. They traded both their goaltenders already this year. So I found that intriguing. But we're on all the different platforms, Apple and Spotify and also on YouTube. And we're getting great guests. So I'm really excited about the podcast. I love doing it. We do 3 times a week. Once is the main show, and then twice to bring listeners up to date on what's going on in the league. We do something called Short Shifts. So it's called NHL Wraparound, and you can get it wherever you get a podcast.
Neil, thank you, sir, for the time. Have a great week. Happy holidays to you and yours, and we'll chat soon. Thank you, my friend.
Spence, happy holidays to you and your family. Make sure you tell them for me.
I will, for sure. The great Neil Smith joins us on a weekly basis to talk Utah Hockey Club, to talk pro hockey. The Utah Hockey Club is in action tonight, taking on Vancouver. Really talented side. Vancouver has a defenseman as of right now who has 35 points on the year. So number 43, if you're heading down to the Delta Center tonight, do not call it the Barn. It's the Delta Center. To put that in perspective, Dylan Gunther has 29 points for the Utah Hockey Club. He's the leader, but he is a attacking player, and Quinn Hughes plays defense. 28 assists for Quinn Hughes. My goodness gracious. So should be a fun night tonight. If you're heading on down to watch a little hockey, enjoy that. Neil today brought to you by Overtime Cards and Collectibles, which is the best spot for all your football, basketball, hockey, MMA, and even Pokemon card collecting. You can buy all your favorites there and even take your cards in. Maybe you have some rare cards in your collection you don't even know about. Start thinking about the holidays. Christmas is a week away. What gifts you need to get to your friends and your loved ones? Try an Overtime Cards gift card. It's the perfect stocking stuffer. They have all the best trading cards and collectibles around. Go check them out online at overtimecardsandcollectibles.com, where you can buy and trade. Check them out. Their location in Sandy. We've been out there a couple of different times. It's a really cool spot at 10673 South State Street in Sandy. All right, we'll do a little NFL football coming up next, as Week 16 is right around the corner. Update you on some quarterback situations, couple of quarterbacks benched today, and a couple of injuries to get to as well. Guy Holiday will roll by later. We're back to college football. We also have Andy Larson on the show today on a Wednesday. Don't go anywhere. How many times? All right, you know what? I've had it up to here. You know what? I've had it. I've had it, Porter. This bump, you have officially put me over the edge. I was hanging in there. I'm just going to ask you a question. How many times have we had the conversation about what is acceptable Billy Joel and what is unacceptable Billy Joel?
Oh, man.
How many times?
I guess it's been a few.
Probably 10 to 15. And I'm just going to ask you, Google Billy Joel, Uptown Girl, and tell me what year the song has been written. If it's in the 80s, it's not allowed.
Okay, that's fair.
So what year was Uptown Girl written? I'm going to guess 82 or 83.
I do know it was in the 80s.
All right, not allowed. You can play Billy Joel, but it's why the Horatio Sands cover band from Step Brother was so brilliant, as he ironically said, we only cover 80s Joel, sir, because everybody knows that was not Billy's greatest decade. That's just my opinion.
Which is fair. I was only playing Billy Joel for Neil.
Did Neil ask you to play a little Billy Joel?
At one point, he did.
Okay.
At one point. Neil Smith, Britton Covey. That might be the only two people that have requested Billy Joel.
In the most Britton Covey thing of all time, of course, he loves Billy Joel. Hey, you've got an update, unfortunately, for you fans about Cam Calhoun. Let's hear it.
Yeah, Cam Calhoun. I don't know that it's much of a surprise on the update, but he has now committed to play for Alabama, headed to Tuscaloosa after a really good year with Utah, transferring in from Michigan and then being productive here. You know, bummer for Utah fans and folks who are trying to hold on to what we used to know of college football when a team like Alabama can truly come in and buy one of your better players. That's tough. It's tough to accept. It's tough to deal with, but it is the reality we're in, and Utah has to reload and move on from it, which they already started doing because they kind of saw this coming.
So, you ready to hear a potential scenario that was run by me this week that I think actually has some legs? Ready to hear on this?
I'm ready for it.
All right. So, this is far from done, but I do think there's potential here. As the P4 teams in college football specifically, and look, every team in major college football has to, for now, I'll say every team in major college football has to certainly change and adapt with the times and see around corners. That's what great leaders do. They see around corners, and that's hard to do, which makes great leaders hard to find. And the NCAA certainly has proven to not have many great leaders that have been unable to see around corners. It's why they've been so reactionary, and it's why they failed at so many corners. They have failed their member institutions. They have failed their athletic departments. They have failed their coaches, and they have failed their players. And they continue to fail all of those groups as a result of just blind, stupid decision-making that leads to chaos, and then they respond and react. They're reactionary. They're emotional. They're not pragmatic. They're not stoic. They don't see around corners like great leaders do. But as the reality of the college football world is moving towards this pro model, as we've discussed on the show over and over, and will continue to, by the way, because it's important to be on these things as early as you can to try to inform people of what they could be in for over the next few years. It's something that we take pride in our ability to do here as a result of just relationships that you build in the business and knowledge of how these things kind of go. But I wouldn't be stunned, because one of the things, Porter, and you know this, that we've talked about quite a bit is the unfortunate piece of collateral damage that smaller programs will suffer as a result of the inability to go play bigger schools to get the check to go supplement their athletic department the rest of the calendar year, not just the season, but the rest of the calendar year. You're familiar with this. You went to one of the smaller schools and ultimately did some work for a school that relies upon a matchup with the University of Utah, like some of these small schools do every single year, begging to take a $500,000 check home in exchange for getting their heads kicked in. It's common practice in college football, but it's probably going away.
And it probably is in some form or fashion now, going away or at least changing, right? It may not be as commonplace. It may not be every year Utah does it, but I still think there's going to be, time and place for those games to be scheduled, but there's going to be, as you mentioned, Spence, an impetus and an incentive from your conference, from your TV schedulers, to just play the big dogs and keep the money up here, right? Keep the money between these programs that are already wealthy and are already kind of a tier or two above these FBS or these FCS schools, these G5 schools. And the unfortunate part is that that's just going to grow the gap. It's just going to make it worse, right? And I don't know what the answer to that is. And I don't know what the next step is, Spence. When you mentioned the 40, 50, 60 teams separate, make their own league, do we now have like a G5 thing on its own sort of footing with FCS and D2 right below it? Is there now a separate classification for those guys where they just play each other? I think it's a fair question because, as you mentioned, there will be an incentive for teams like Alabama not to play Mercer in late November, even though they're ironically the ones complaining about it.
Well, and ultimately, I don't know if it's about incentive or lack of incentive. It's about we don't do that anymore because the new reality of college football will be the blue bloods playing each other every week. But you asked about the solution. Here's one that was proposed to me this week. So let's dig through it and see if there's anything there. If we continue to put, we'll just say 40 schools, okay, the SEC, the Big Ten, then whoever else they want to take with them, and hopefully that's Utah, hopefully it's BYU, I think that it is. Okay, so that group of P4, whatever we're calling it, is over here with their own governing body, the own people in charge. It is their own entity. They broke it away from the NCAA. It is their own entity, and essentially it's pro football. As we've talked about on this show for years, if you read the tea leaves, it's inevitable that it is happening. I'm not an expert on labor law. I'll leave Matt Brown for that. As a result of Trump in the White House, what does that mean for labor law? That's not my thing. I don't know. Okay, I still just believe, only because of the knowledge of how these things work, every single problem in college athletics right now could be solved by moving rapidly into the pro model, allowing the players to unionize, collectively bargain, and negotiate with a governing body that would run college football. But what about a pure minor league AAA system that involves these other teams that are left out in kind of no man's land with the inability to go up and get their heads kicked in by a P4 school in exchange for a bunch of money to support their athletic department? And we'll just use this as an example. What if suddenly Southern Utah is Utah's farm league team, okay? And we could expand this out. Now, the problem is there just aren't enough big schools to have a one-for-one match. But the money is going to be so big for the schools that are in this elite club. I mean, believe me, it's why there are massive power players behind the scenes right now making serious moves that I hope to discuss on this show as early as January that will be good news for Utah football fans. And the motivation for these moves being made behind the scenes all come down to one thing, and that is make sure Utah football is ready when the time comes to be on the right side of that line so they're in the group of 40 teams that now have this pro league that essentially is the NFL, but we call it something different. Because if you are in that league, it essentially would almost be like having an NFL team in Salt Lake. It wouldn't be exactly that, but it would be as close to what we could get here in Salt Lake. If Utah is in this list of teams, and every week it is Michigan and it's Ohio State and it's, we could keep going, and it's Alabama and it's Georgia and it's the Blue Bloods. Now, every year you're not getting every great team in your building, but every year you're getting another one of those schools every week for your home games. Gone are the days of Southern Utah. Gone are the days of UC Davis. Gone are the days of Northern Colorado. And all due respect to these programs, this is not me saying you don't deserve it. This is me acknowledging the reality of where college football is headed. Gone are the days of the SEC scheduling cakewalks during week 12 or whatever. Those days should have been gone years ago, but guess who didn't do anything about it? The NCAA, because they never do. But what if you come up with some sort of farm system where a school like the University of Utah can offer some financial support to a school like Southern Utah or, some of the other smaller schools in this region that are terrified about how they're going to survive? Because if you're Utah, you will be flush with cash. If you're one of the 40 teams in this private club, you will be flush with cash and resources. So what if Utah contacts a Southern Utah? What if an Alabama, contacts a school like, I'm just throwing it out there, Murray State or something like it. And so, some of these schools that are used to bankrolling their athletic departments by taking on audacious asks to get their heads kicked in by big-time college football programs, instead of that, it's, okay, here's where your money's going to come from. Okay, I've got a wide receiver prospect that we can't get eligible. He's a good kid, but guess what? He's yours for a year. We're going to pay for him. We're going to make sure your program is fed. We're going to come down. We're going to upgrade your facilities. But guess what? As a result, you're our talent feeder. You're now our AAA affiliate. I mean, the first time I heard it, I was like, well, hold on. There aren't enough schools. If it's only 40, and there are literally hundreds of other schools, tens of, a bunch of other schools left over, it can't be a one-for-one. But in pro baseball, you have AAA, AA, A-ball, rookie ball. You have as many as 4 feeders to your main team. In pro basketball, at the beginning, there was like one D-League team, kids back in the day, for, 3 or 4 NBA teams. And now I believe it's every team in pro basketball has a G-League team. And in college football, you will have enough money to financially support and allow economic infusion into 3 or 4 smaller programs with the understanding of your main job now is to develop talent for us. Now, I'm sure that they won't love that, but guess what they would love even less than that? Not existing.
Right.
So that to me is something that was thrown out there to me this week, and actually something that people close to, I'll just say, the program up here in Salt Lake have bantered about. Certainly, this, like everything else, is far away from the finish line. But for those smaller schools that right now are terrified about having the opportunity to play these big-time matchups go away so they can get a check, I would imagine they would willingly and eagerly sign up for this if the money was right for them to continue their athletic department.
Well, and that partnership wouldn't have to end at just, here's a fee in exchange for the player that we're taking, your best player, right, that we're taking off of your roster. If it's an official partnership, that goes deep into scouting, into, you can go all over the map with ways you can officially tie these teams together, and it would benefit the smaller schools and, in some ways, the larger schools. And I think that, I like it because if there's a pro model, there's got to be some form of semi-pro model as well, right? There's got to be a ladder to get there. And I think that gives you an opportunity, that gives those schools an opportunity to keep their foot in the door. And I think long-term, like big picture, it's not the worst move. But how about like the 1 year, like the one-off opportunities that Alabama gets, right? The 12-team playoff. Alabama gets an opportunity, if they make that, at millions and millions of dollars just by advancing one more week, right? What if, and this is adding on top of all of your suggestions, what if there was also a little promotion, relegation type thing going on? Where
don't get me started on promotion, relegation. I want it in every sport domestically, just so you know.
Win the G5, AAC, whatever it is, and guess who's moving up? Guess who's replacing the bottom Power 4 school that didn't win a game all year long? And guess who has a chance next year to have an FBS schedule rather than playing the teams that they've played every year for decades now? It's not only, Spence, the powers in college football being ahead of the teams now. This has been a situation for years and years and years. The power structure didn't just come out of nowhere. So I don't know, bringing these historically disadvantaged programs along, I think would be beneficial for the entire sport. And there are creative ways that we can do it.
promotion relegation solves so many problems, but people in this country are not ready for that conversation. Like in pro basketball,
Be so fun.
guess what, Jazz? You better try, or next year out of the Western Conference, winning the West could be the Long Island Nets if they win the G League.
Right.
Like, it would solve tanking. It would solve teams not trying down the stretch. Can you imagine, like, the final game of the NBA season is the Jazz Blazers? They both have, like, 10 wins, and the loser of that game plays in the G League next year? It would be awesome. It would be unbelievable. So if that's part of this, but here's the thing, it never will be. Because no team will, in college football or the NFL, would ever agree to take that slide. And I don't think anybody in charge would have the gravitas or the juice to get it done. But it does feel like there is a way that could be beneficial. To your point, if you're one of the teams, okay, we'll just use this example because it's local. If it's Utah and Utah's AAA team is Southern Utah, and the Utes, as a result of the ability to utilize Southern Utah as a talent ground to develop players that maybe aren't ready to play at Utah yet. And this is very stretching your imagination out of the box, academy type thinking, AAA baseball type thinking. But if we are moving into this reality, and one of the pieces of unfortunate collateral damage is these smaller programs that lose some of their funding, this is a solution to that. And it would benefit, I think, at the end of the day, some of the bigger programs too. Okay, this running back, we can't get him eligible. We're going to send him down to you for a couple of semesters. You are going to follow the way we do things because we are bankrolling your program. Here's his off-season program. Here's the strength and conditioning program we want him to follow. Here are the classes he needs to pass down there in order for us to get him on campus or whatever it is. And the University of Utah still pays his NIL or whatever it is, the salary, I suppose, as we move towards a pro model, bankrolled by the Utes, not ready to play Big 12 football, develops down at Southern Utah for a couple of semesters, comes up to Salt Lake when he's ready, and Southern Utah gets to get paid to be Utah's developmental program, and therefore everybody wins. And if Utah advances to a CFP, if they win a Big 12 championship, if they win a national championship, yes, let's dream big because why not? We only get one trip around this blue marble. Southern Utah gets a little piece of that, right? And therefore, as Michael Scott taught us, it is a win-win-win-win. So I thought it was an interesting model that was thrown at me earlier this week. And believe me, I'm not just inventing this. These are actual conversations that are really taking place. And you do have to stretch your imagination, and you probably have to, well, not probably. You have to simply, and if you haven't done this yet, just do it now. The college football that you loved 10 years ago is never coming back. College football you loved 5 years ago is never coming back. I maintain Saturdays in the fall still feel the same. And I maintain high-level college football is still an unbelievable television product, even with all of its flaws. But as we move towards this reality, things like this, you're going to have to open up your mind to. You're going to have to open your mind to these athletes being employees. Sorry, Taylor Randall. I know university presidents don't want to hear that. And open your mind up to certain infrastructure changes that definitely feel more professional than amateur. Dare I even say that invented word that doesn't mean anything anymore. And part of this could be a feeder system where some of these smaller schools who are afraid of what they're going to do to make sure that their bankroll is maintained so they can simply exist, latch on to the 40 schools that are in the mix to be in this new pro league as an affiliate or a developmental system where they get paid to do their jobs too. Who knows, man? Who knows? I mean, it's ever changing. And, we could take a break and something could change between the next 4 or 5 minutes before we come back on air. So I thought I'd throw that out there. Some interesting stuff coming down earlier today. We'll do some NFL a little bit later. Want to get you guys ready for the busy weekend ahead. Maybe you're in the fantasy football, semifinals, or is it finals time of year? Get back to the University of Utah transfer portal update. 9 players added as of now. We'll update you a little bit later on because Guy Holiday will stop by. But coming up next, don't go anywhere. From the Salt Lake Tribune, one of our favorites, it's Sandy Larson. All right, you tried to ruin the show with 80s Billy Joel, and you brought it back. A little war on drugs. Good vibes. Proud of you.
I wasn't trying to ruin the show.
Oh, no, that was an attempt to ruin the show. We have talked about the lack of 80s Joel on the show. We do not have 80s Billy Joel on the radio show, and you knew that, and you did it anyway.
I think it's more of a lack of my ability to understand and or remember rules.
All right.
I might have to write that one down.
Okay, fair enough. You should start writing all of them down, and therefore you will never break them. But that's just me.
It's an unwritten rule, though.
Don't get me
We
started.
have an agreement on unwritten rules.
Don't get me started on unwritten rules. However, our next guest, those who have worked with Andy Larson, describe him as a mix of charisma, competitiveness, love of sport, and unrelenting persistence as the ingredients behind his success. Andy, happy Wednesday. How are you?
I think it was you who described me as that, but I'm well. How are you?
I'm well. Did you have a chance to peruse or read the entire Michael Rothstein piece on the owner of the Jazz, Ryan Smith?
I did, yeah.
Okay. What'd you think?
Look, I think I don't know that there's a lot new there for Utahns who have been paying attention to Ryan's tenure. It's more of a national piece. Look, I think this has happened in front office sports. This has happened in the Athletic. This has happened kind of when Ryan gets profiled nationally. Like, I think Ryan is very good at selling himself and kind of the vision of Utah. And I think he does have like kind of this very interesting story to a national audience about changing the perception of Utah. And like, there's one man who's pretty driven to do that. And that, in Ryan I think, it's something that is a compelling story to that big audience. I think to Utahns, we know that change takes time, and we know that change involves some difficult or unpopular decisions, like raising the tax here in Salt Lake for the stadium district. So like I think kind of the proof is in kind of the pudding and execution on Ryan's side, and that's not to say that like he's a bad figure or anything like that he's been bad for Utah sports. I think it's clear that he's been good for Utah sports, and we have a hockey team now, and RSL was purchased, and all these things that probably wouldn't have happened if Ryan Smith didn't exist have happened. But we also know that the story is maybe more complicated than the one that ESPN told the other day.
Buried the lead. Do you think he can really dunk? Do you really think Ryan can dunk? 10-foot hoop, regulation basketball.
I haven't seen it. I'm skeptical. I keep trying to get Will Hardy to dunk too, by the way, and he won't show it off either. And I kind of believe that Will, as a much taller person than Ryan, much more likely to dunk. But yeah, I'm gonna say I'll believe it when I see it.
I'm with you on that one. Several other elements in there that I would put myself into the category of I'll believe it when I see it as well, but let's put it aside. That looked like a piece that was written by his PR staff and sent directly to ESPN. But hey, maybe that's the name of the game, to your point, when you're introducing yourself to a national audience. All right, right off the top, well, not now because we did that right off the top, but here's where I wanted to go today because I was discussing this dynamic on the show this week. Tim McMahon, Zach Harper, in addition to Tom Haberstroh. I'll just ask you, because our jobs are different. Your day-to-day is the beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune for the Utah Jazz. And my job day-to-day includes pro basketball and includes the Jazz, but if it's not compelling, I can pivot and do other things. For a season like this, Andy, what are the challenges of telling compelling stories for a team that is unserious about competing?
You just have to find different angles to do it with. And, I'm not going to lie to you, like, the people who read our Jazz coverage is significantly down from, the Donovan Mitchell era. There's no doubt about it. There's kind of less compelling basketball stories, right? Because the whether or not John Collins is doing well this season matters significantly less than whether or not, like, Donovan Mitchell is doing well, right? Like, it just doesn't matter in a season where you're going 5-20. So, you want to tell stories in kind of an interesting way that does matter. And I think there are kind of some interesting stories going on in the hemisphere of the Jazz that you can still tell, whether that's a brand new sports district or, Delta Center renovation, or what's going on with AJ DeBanza and BYU and Ryan Smith, or what's going on with, we've got a bunch of different stories that I don't necessarily want to like reveal now before we publish them in a few weeks or months or whatever. Like, But I think you have to tell more like stories that are going to kind of count no matter what the record is, right? And then obviously like the development of guys like Keontae George and Isaiah Collier and Taylor Hendricks and Kyle Filipowski and so on and so forth. But like, we're trying to write about what matters to Utahns and what makes a difference in the community. And right now the Jazz are bad enough that it doesn't matter whether or not they win their next 10 games in a row or not. Like, it's just they are what they are. And so you just have to tell stories in different ways. And heck, for me, sometimes that means talking about other sports, or like I said, AJ DeBanto, or talking about the bees moving or stadium stuff or what have you.
What are, according to the data you have at your disposal, because I also have my dashboard and I can track what interviews do well, and like you, the NBA Jazz stuff is not tracking the way that it once did, and I really take pride in what we do over here covering the league and covering the Jazz, but when it's not compelling, you can't fake it. What are the more interesting storylines and angles? Because we've talked a lot this week about lack of NBA ratings, and a new piece today by Sports Media Watch, she had a lot of light on that. And, we talked a lot this week about NBA Cup. Do you care or not? The bottom line is, if there are compelling stories and good storytellers to convey said stories to the general public, people will care. What are the compelling stories, Andy, about this Jazz team this year?
Again, it's off court. It's people are interested in the arena. People are interested in the stadium districts. People are interested in the drama behind the scenes. People are interested in, I think, the question of whether or not people are interested. And look, I think you look at like how politics is covered nowadays, and I think you see that as well, where like, CNN, Fox, whatever, they're all kind of covering it from the same angle of like, what are the polls saying? What do people think about this? Rather than, hey, what are the actual policy changes at play here? What are the actual implications of those policies, et cetera, right? So I think we're kind of seeing that extend out to basketball a little bit, where whether or not people are interested in basketball is as interesting or maybe even more interesting than the basketball itself. And that's kind of a dangerous and weird place to be as a society on both the sports and politics level. But like there's no doubt that it's happening. And again, you have to find angles that are interesting to people. So, I'm pretty comfortable in breaking down X's and O's and the numbers behind the basketball stuff. This season's been interesting in that I, have to spread my wings and go to city council meetings and talk to politicians and learn about, taxpayer fundraising mechanisms and that sort of stuff. And that's been, an adventure for me, and I'm learning a lot. And I'm proud of the reporting we've done this year on that subject. But that's what people are interested in right now, rather than, again, whether or not John Collins is scoring 20 points a game or not.
I'm just seeing that you tweeted out that Sports Media Watch piece. Our guy Howard Beck sent that to me earlier today. So let's move over there for a moment. I don't care to do a ton of content on NBA ratings, but we've talked about it with other guests, so I want to give you the same time to kind of give us your thoughts as well. I thought what John Lewis wrote was pretty compelling as far as the context that's needed, as a result of how many homes have pulled the plug, how many less television sets there are now than there were just a few years ago, and the fact that every sport actually is down a little bit, even the NFL. Now the NFL is down only 4%. Now, being down 48% is, you can't ignore that, but it doesn't appear that this chicken little sky is falling situation that we've heard from a lot of people in the media in the NBA is necessarily fair overall, but people are definitely tuned out in a way that is a little bit new. So what's the Andy Larson take on the data that we have at our disposal about how many people are watching pro basketball right now?
Yeah, so, first of all, I think for the sky to be falling, there have to be consequences, right? Like, and the NBA just signed this new 11-year, $75 billion contract that will turn every team in the league this year to get its national TV deal, right? Like, so, basically salaries, and not only is the music still playing, the music is maybe accelerating, the music's speeding up, if you will. Like, the money is coming in at a higher and higher rate than ever before. We're going to see your growth in collective bargaining agreement income in terms of salaries, in terms of how much the owners make, so on and so forth, right? So for the ratings to matter from like a health of basketball point of view, that would have to change, and that's locked in for 11 years. The other thing I'll say is, like, what the Sports Media Watch piece pointed out is, yes, the other sports are declining as well. And I think there is kind of like this cultural aspect, because basketball has always kind of been at the forefront of cultural progressivism, that some people are rooting for the NBA to fail, quite frankly. And I think that's why so often it is kind of in these conversations. Like, look, I think obviously ratings are down, and it is real. And I think certainly in Utah, numbers are significantly down as the team has gone to, the bottom of the Western Conference. I do kind of agree with the idea that these kind of things are cyclical. And, as we see LeBron and Steph phase out, as we see the game change, I think ultimately the league will be in a fine place, because it's fine from a revenue point of view. I think the rest of it will kind of figure itself out to some degree, while acknowledging that, hey, the world is changing. We don't live in a monoculture anymore. Like, that we aren't ever going to see a Michael Jordan ever again.
All right, let's continue this, because I want to ask you about, as far as what I've heard, what I've read, what I've listened to, people that, and maybe people are just using some straw man arguments based off of a little bit of loose data to air beef they have with pro basketball or the NBA, certainly. But, everybody's talked about the 48% decline for NBA games from 2012. But if you compare that with the pre-Christmas average to the season that began, so essentially 48% since 2012. And when you look at the broader trend, according to what we have in front of us here, viewership for Major League Baseball, college football, and men's college basketball is down about 40%. And people simply using television is down 52% to fewer than 50 million. And cable homes are down a third from back in 2012. He goes on to note that the NFL is actually down as well, but only 4% compared to the 48% for the NBA and the 40% for Major League Baseball. College football in the same boat. So basically, a lot of people have cut the cord and they're not watching TV, at least in the classic way that we're accustomed to. And so sports across the board are down. But I wonder if you believe that there's any validity to the things that people seem to be bringing to the forefront, namely the product is bad and teams only hunt threes, and they do it the same way. When you hear that, what comes to your mind?
So I do think teams played more differently than I think kind of that argument gives them credit for. And I think there's a lot of interesting research that shows that. Like, look, it's people kind of imagine the game as spread, pick and roll right now, and I just don't know that it is, with the exception of 5 or 10 teams in the league. Like, if anything, a spread pick and roll is maybe happening less because teams are doing more off-ball stuff, admittedly, to get threes, and obviously the three-point shot is up. But I don't know if style of play is consistent. I'll also say this, like, YouTube exists, and you can go and don't watch the NBA Finals. Go watch a February 5th game in 1995, and I watch all 2 hours of it, because this really does exist on YouTube. You have to do a little bit of pecking around, but you can find it. And tell me what you think about whether or not that product's watchable. I mean, I get that we should be emphasizing the incredible athletic talent of these athletes, and to some extent, the three-point shot is not that. But, man, I don't know that I'm seeing a lot of great athletic plays in the 1995 game either. And, ultimately, I do think, like, the long ball is attractive to, a wide audience, whether that's the success of Steph Curry or the success of Caitlin Clark. Like, I think that there is something about that does resonate even with an audience in 2024, I think, as emphasized by Caitlin Clark being successful. So I'm less sympathetic to the idea that it's style of play, that it's the three-point shot that's harming ratings, and instead it's some of the other factors we talked about.
All right, let's move on to the next one. You referenced the 90s, okay? And I can promise you that back then players, if we could talk about the product, style of play, whatever, but I will tell you this, players had to play because they had to get paid. A lot of players had to get paid twice a month. They needed the paycheck, believe it or not, back then. So at least they showed up and they played hard, okay? So what we have today is oftentimes players are not showing up, and the guaranteed contracts oftentimes make for less than overzealous competition. What's the Andy Larson take on that?
Yeah, I'm more sympathetic to that. And I do think that that's a significant difference. And, honestly, some of what I've seen just with the culture difference between here and the National Hockey League, which also plays the 80-plus games, it has shown me something there, right? Like, I do think that that's something that there should be kind of efforts to address. The problem is, the league has tried, right? The league has tried to put in rules where you can't just rest guys for no reason on national TV games. And indeed, you can't just load manage in a whole lot of situations. And, the teams are putting things in place around that. I also do think there are more injuries than before because there is more movement required in the game than before. Again, go watch that 1995 game and kind of guess how much these guys are really moving around. They may be more bumping and more physical, but from a injury point of view, I think it's probably less dangerous. And I think we're seeing that in kind of the injuries we've seen. I mean, look, we've seen it in Major League Baseball, too, where guys are getting, pitchers are, Tommy John surgery rates are 3 times higher because guys are throwing faster and trying to do more with their bodies. I don't know what to do about that. I think, the ultimate concession there would be fewer games, but I also don't think fewer games is necessarily a panacea for the league being able to really meet higher audiences. I mean, frankly, MLS has 1 game every week, and nobody's watching that on TV. So I think there is, there need to be conversations here. I think there needs to be, I would hope for a culture change so that players want to play more often, so that teams want to play their players more often. I don't know kind of what the mechanisms are that lead to that change.
Well, and also, Andy, this sounds pathetic. What turns me off the most, if it doesn't matter to you, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
There are so many nights where I'm flipping back and forth through games I want to watch and guys aren't playing hard. And Ethan Strauss, I don't know if you like him. I know he's polarizing on a pod a couple of weeks ago. That was his entire thing. The main reason people are turning off basketball is not load management. It's not star sitting. It's not all the other stuff. It's the players that do play don't play hard, which is so pathetic to me. It's embarrassing.
I don't know that I see that, again, differently than February 5th in 1995. I go back and watch those games and tell me if those guys are working as hard as they. I don't know.
That's where you'll lose me, man. That's where you will lose me for sure. For sure, the effort. I'm not talking about the product. I'm not talking about the game. I'm not talking about the flow of play. The effort undeniably was better back then. That's where you're going to lose me for sure.
I don't know that it was for a team in the Jazz's Western Conference spot, right? I think again the game I think demanded a lot less then, and I completely agree with you. The culture is very different. I do think teams play their guys more and more often, but guys like Derek Coleman existed, and they're
but he was the exception. You can name a couple here or there. I can give you a grip of dudes over the next couple of nights that are just not going to show up and play hard at all. This is a bad argument, Andy. You oftentimes have brought things to the table, and I don't necessarily disagree with you that whenever we get into the whole, it was so much better back in the day, and then look, I was at Knick games. It was 72-68 against the Heat. I saw those games. I saw that basketball. But strictly from a show-up and play-hard standpoint, you can give me a Luther Wright or a Derek Coleman here or there, and I'll give you 30% of the league every night today, dude. So this is one that I can't roll with you on.
Hey, so who in the NBA is not trying hard right now?
From my vantage point, Andy, every time I turn on the game,
names, Spence.
half the team,
give me
half the player. Okay, let me pull up a roster and just go down the roster. I am dead serious. I feel like most of the time, a lot of the games I watch that don't matter in the regular season, and let me be clear, I don't know how you make games matter in the regular season. They've tried with the NBA Cup. Given time, maybe it sticks. It didn't feel like it did this year. But oftentimes I find myself tuning out because players don't play hard. They don't seem to care. We can talk about the difference in product, and I think there's validity there. But simply from a show up and do your job as a basketball player standpoint, I think it's an issue with the league this year, and I think it's an issue with the league this era. I really do.
I mean, I'm somewhat sympathetic to the idea that guys are kind of saving something for the playoffs. And you have more experience with the Knicks in the 90s than I do, right? Like, I am not that sympathetic to the idea that, like, the vast majority of NBA players aren't trying basically as hard as they can, possession by possession, especially, like when there is so much money at stake and like they do have kind of these, like Talen Horton-Tucker was a terrible basketball player who missed defensive assignments and so on and so forth. But like, I do basically think the guy was trying as hard as he can in his own weird and goofy way to do good at basketball. Now, I think we can talk about like whether or not that direction is in the right place right now, right? Where like maybe you live in a highlight world in 2024 where scoring is more important than ever, where defense doesn't matter, where guys are incentivized for kind of the wrong things rather than trying to win games. I think that's a fair conversation, but I do basically think that these guys are trying relatively hard, pretty hard on a night-to-night basis.
Yeah, and
by and large,
I do think a lot of it is money. I really do. I mean, as I've said this a couple of times this week, if I had a $180 million guaranteed deal to do this radio show, I might show up and make fart noises for 4 hours twice a week. Like, I'm not judge. I think all of this, Andy, oftentimes comes down to one thing, and that's following the money. And if the NBA, college football, and it is undeniable that more players back in the day, when the guaranteed money wasn't stupid like it is now, had to show up and play because they had to make money twice a month. They had to make that paycheck. So that's why we saw 82 games mattering and things like that, because guys had to make money.
I want to add, too, that, like, to me, one other big thing that's not talked about enough is, like, yes, that's true for players. That's also true for ownership, where – it used to be that the bottom teams in the league weren't guaranteed to make a profit, where the Jazz had to draft Dominique Wilkins and then trade him to Atlanta to make $1 million because otherwise the Jazz would have failed as a franchise, right? Like, would have gone completely out of business. And now the worst performing business-wise team in the NBA is so profitable and is also worth $2 billion that, like, there's no fear of failure from teams. And so you can rest guys. You can tank out 1, 2, 3 seasons. You can kind of kick the can down the road. You can give out a lesser product out there, because ultimately it doesn't matter when your franchise values are going up that much and you're guaranteed to make $250 million a year from your TV deal alone, let alone ticket sales and everything else. So, like, if you have that $250 million locked up in the bank, there's no reason for ownership to try either. And so the only thing there is to try for is kind of the NBA title, which will impress your, like, fellow billionaire friends. There's no sense of desperation anymore from, I don't think, the ownership side. And I think that also explains a lot of what's going on.
2 years ago, Mavs lose in the playoffs. Jason Kidd takes the podium. He says out loud, "What you guys don't understand is we are millionaires cheering for each other." And you're like, oh, all right, well, then that's the deal. Right? Like, everybody in your club, all you guys are millionaires cheering for each other. And Kevin Durant, 2 years ago, tweeted out something like, what nobody ever says out loud is we don't care about the fans. We never talk about the fans. We don't give a rip about the fans. So finally, Andy, before I set you loose, it does feel like it's just this club of, if we take Jason Kidd at his word, millionaires cheering for each other. And as long as the money is good, I suppose they can just send us their P&L statement and drop the mic. But can we just at times care about something other than money? Just sometimes, not all the time, just sometimes can we care about something other than the bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, that's what these teams would say they're doing by, losing $5 million in ticket sales by chasing an NBA title.
Yeah.
When in reality, like, what they're doing, I don't think serves the fans' overall best interest in any significant or real way, right? So, in the end, everyone's going to spin it in the way that they want to, and that's the way it is. But, like, yeah, I don't see it changing, and ultimately it would have to kind of take, kind of universal or significant fan action, I think, for things to change. I mean, I kind of look at what happened overseas in the European Super League thing, right, where they wanted to create a Super League and kind of shake up European soccer so there'd be only one league with the best teams and kind of everyone else who wasn't in a big market would be left out. The fans revolted and had a real uprising, and there was, like, marching in the streets, and ultimately the powers that be got spooked and decided not to do it. We haven't had American fan action like that, I don't think, ever. And I can't imagine a circumstance where there's fan action like that in mass in streets about some decision that a league made or a commissioner made or a team owner made. And ultimately, I think it would only be fan action that could kind of change this, because right now the money is coming in so guaranteedly that the actual decisions here don't really matter to a lot of people.
So for Jazz fan listeners, if you wonder why Justin and Danny and Ryan need to build a better team, it's so me and Andy don't argue for 30 minutes about things that have nothing to do with the Utah Jazz. All right, my guy, let's get together soon. Happy holidays. Thanks for the time, okay?
No, legit, it was an awesome conversation. See you, Spence.
For sure. The great Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune. All right, we're going to get back to college football coming up on the other side with Guy Holliday, longtime college football coach. Let's welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. Give him a call at 801-424-DISH. Affordable options for your internet, for your wireless, and also for your cable television. What's going on, Ryan?
What we do is we give you the best deals out there, and that's something we can guarantee. And I love that we have that position. You won't be able to find a better price. You're going to get the best customer service from the retailer of the year for the entire nation, the Dish Professionals. Guys, we'll take care of you. And this offer right now, it's a great offer. And we've just seen these massive rate increases happen across the board between cable, DirecTV, YouTube TV just smacked everybody with this monster increase. And guys, here's the thing. If you want to just keep paying more, this bill's going to keep going up, or you want to pay a little less, and you want to also get a price guarantee, which will make it so you're paying a lot less for the next 2 years, call me. This is what we do. Get the biggest DVR out there. Okay, award-winning. Consumer Reports has rated this the number one DVR so many times. It is an awesome piece of equipment. 16 tuners, 2 terabytes of storage. It auto records your locals. It will auto hop commercials. These are things that nobody does. It'll auto record your team's favorite games. It's got a remote locator built in, so on every single receiver. So if you lose your remote in the pillow cushions, or you do what I did and walk out and leave it on the bench in the garage, you can't figure out where your remote is, you just press the button and it begins to beep and flash until you find it. Call us up, get the upgrade, and I'll tell you what, we're going to throw in some cool stuff. We'll get you some movie channels. We'll throw those in, the Dish Movie Pack. It's tons of different availability there. But how about we get you the ultimate movie pack, and that is Netflix. That's built into the receiver like a channel, and we'll give you that free for the next 2 years. So this makes this price even better, much cheaper than YouTube TV, in fact. And so if you call up, take advantage of that. We'll get you that offer, have you installed for free, and also we'll throw in dinner at JCW's. Guys, here's the thing. These offers are out there for your taking, and it's an awesome thing because you get to make money off of it and take advantage of it. And they only last for a short time. I'm pleading with them to extend it, but it's going to end here shortly. So call us now. Get set up. We can help you, too, if you bought a new TV. In fact, if you want a new TV and you need to look for internet, I got an internet provider. It's $50 a month, and they'll give you a free 50-inch TV when you get set up. So call us, 424-DISH. Get the very best price. We can help with internet, also with wireless, too. Use the same cell towers. I'm serious about this. Have the best coverage in all of Salt Lake, all of the United States, actually. Hotspot, brand new iPhone 16 or Samsung S24, free with no trade-in, and spend $20, $30 a month per line less. This adds up quick. If you call us, we can save you money. We can upgrade you, new equipment, have you installed as soon as next day. 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Pros. Guy Holliday, longtime college football coach, locally and nationally, stops by. Coming up next right here on ESPN 700. I like Madonna as much as the next guy. Don't get me wrong. This might be is this the first Madonna track we've ever played in the history of the show? I'm not sure we've had a single other Madonna track.
That might be a good question. You might be right on that one.
I know why you're doing it, because our guy is hopping on, Guy Holliday, a longtime college football coach, friend of the show, but it's been a number of years. Guy, how are you, sir? How you been? Been too long.
I'm doing great. It's been a long time. How are you doing?
I'm well. Let's just get a life update. Of course, we know you from your time in our state, both with Brigham Young and the University of Utah as a high-level coach. What's Coach Holliday up to these days?
Well, I opened up a training facility in Phoenix, 26,000 square feet, and we train athletes all the way from 8 years old up to several professional players.
Oh, good for you. So I guess, as they say, when you actually become a coach and you do it at a high level, it's hard to quit that life. Is that something you always want to do, to continue to develop young people and teach them about both football and life?
Yeah, I did. I do. I still do. I had opportunities to get back into the college game, several opportunities. It just, in that game, it's all about who you work with, and then it's maddening right now. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around exactly all that goes on in the college football world.
And there's a lot that's going on in the college football world, Coach, and I do want to get your take on as much of it as we can over the minutes that we have with you. And I want to start with the news that a guy you know really well in Kyle Whittingham will be back on the sidelines for the University of Utah for year 21. A lot of rumors about whether or not Coach Witt would step aside, as you know, Guy, but he has decided to come back. What do you make of Coach Witt back on the sideline?
Well, I still have Witt and I probably talk once a month, so it wasn't a surprise to me. I think if you know Coach and know his personality, I think, and obviously he didn't tell me this, or I didn't hear this from anybody, but watching that, I watched him here at Arizona State, got a chance to spend some time with him when he was here, and man, when I watched the BYU game and the turnout of the game, I never for once thought Kyle Whittingham would retire. And then watching even the Colorado game, the double reverse for the touchdown and the closing minutes, I said, oh no, there's no way Witt's going to go out like this. I just know him, the competitor, the fierce competitor he is, and he's accomplished too much to let his last year and legacy be affected by that, in my opinion.
And I'm with you there. And, a lot of people last offseason, Guy, kind of surmised that if Utah football had the year that we all thought that they were going to have, I certainly did, and they certainly did too, maybe that would be enough for Kyle to hand the program over to Morgan. But, of course, it didn't work out this year the way any of us thought. That losing streak is something we haven't seen around here in a long, long time. So I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to have you on the show to ask you, of course, there are the injuries, number one, to your quarterback, which you can't have. But what do you make of a season this year in the Big 12 for Utah football that not many people, if anybody, guys, saw coming?
Wow. Things that happen. I think, I've been in locker rooms as a player and as a coach, and I think one of the tough things about managing the whole pay-to-play situation, or NIL, whatever you want to call it, revenue reimbursement, I could care less. But I think one of the toughest things about that is when players are getting paid and they aren't performing, whether it's injury, whether it's they aren't holding up their end of the bargain. And other players, and even in NFL, you can sense this when you aren't holding up your end, it affects the locker room. And so I do think Cam getting injured affected their locker room. I think, there's other players who were connected to Cam, who were dependent on Cam, because today, kids with so many people in their ear, every time something like that happens, yes, it affects the team, but now it's affecting them individually. As far as having the ability, as everybody is saying, to get the bag, whatever those things are. Now it's affecting the programs on deeper levels. And then when you factor in, the transfer portal is great. I mean, we can go back and forth about is it positive, is it negative? That's irrelevant. It's how you manage it. And so at this point, you got to make sure it's not just about talent, it's about getting the right people in. Because talent will cause overlook other factors that include team chemistry, work ethic, and things of that nature that affect team chemistry and just the overall attitude of the player, because now you're looking at players strictly for their monetary value. And when you're looking at monetary value, you're looking strictly at their output. And so that affects your team chemistry. And I think all of those things played a role. And I think Cam getting hurt, I think when you him now in the middle of it, I think the team, went down the same path like the fans. Oh no, here we go again. And that takes its toll. And now that you have media and easily able to communicate with players, and players read social media consistently for the most part, all of those things bleed out into your program. And let's be honest, Utah's mantra was one of the reasons why I embraced it so much. We don't become you, you become us. It was, in my opinion, built the same way that the school my school, SC, it was built that way on toughness. And, it's just hard to maintain that and develop players when the moment you develop a player, you got to pay to keep them. So all of those things are going to play a part. And let's be honest now, you got to be able to manage a roster that turns over 30% every year. Every year, you got to be able to manage that. And it may turn over as much as 40 to 50%. And no other level of sports do you encounter that. Not even the NFL are you turning your roster 30 to 40% every year.
And it can't be sustained, Guy. It can't. And it's not the coach's fault. It's not the player's fault. It's not the administrator's fault. The blame is squarely on the NCAA, who was thrown out of the Supreme Court 4 years ago and was told that they are a serial antitrust violator and they had to figure out a new model, and they just never did. But this is what we're left with, Guy, this model now where the transfer portal is open during the season. It can't last. This is an unsustainable model where, to your point, you have to rebuild every year. In pro sports, the tough reality of a rebuild will manifest itself, but if you're doing your business right, that's once every decade or something. In college sports, in college football, it's being rebuilt every single year. Do you foresee any other route other than simply leaning into the pro model where players sign contract, they unionize, they collectively bargain, and therefore, they sign multi-year deals so they stay on campus and they get paid as if they're employees? I know that school administrators don't want that, but it feels like coaches and players would kind of welcome it because at least it would provide some guidance and some guardrails.
I don't see another way. I just don't know how you do it. I think something has to be done, and I think you're right on point, but then you have to collectively bargain. Then you have to declare them what they are at this point. They are professionals. You can't tell me any different. When you receive money to play, you're a professional athlete. I think we all will agree with that. And so, do I see another way? You can't go on like this. You can't just randomly there's no salary cap. So let's be honest right now. If you're in the SEC, you're at a huge advantage with revenue sharing because your television contract is bigger than everybody else's. So your revenue stream is higher. And so those are the things that I don't think the fan looked at. I know everybody begged for the college football playoff, and I think that's great. But now you guys, we're looking at a team playing January 20th, and now we're going to turn around and ask those kids to be ready for spring ball come March and have more contact. Well, I played the game, so I know your body only has but so many hits in it. And I had 13 surgeries, and so I know your body eventually breaks down. No, I don't think what we're doing is sustainable, but you have to manage it as is. You can't sit around and cry about it. You got to understand that, okay, I'm losing 40% of my team. I better be well-versed in the portal and who's coming out so that I know who's going to replace XYZ with equal or better than talent. That's the critical part. And he has to have character and be able to mesh into a team. And then I have to sit back and look at it and say, next year I may be looking for this player all over again.
Yeah, not yeah. It's simply just
hard.
yeah. It's not sustainable. It can't last like this. And the NCAA, it's amazing, really, Guy. It's the power of college football that the sport and the product continues to receive the love and attention that it does when the business has been so poorly run. Because part of leadership is seeing around corners. What the NCAA has shown is that they cannot do that, so therefore they react when they realize something is broken. And this time around, what they're realizing is broken is leaving the transfer portal open during the actual season. Can you imagine, Guy, being a coach for one of the 12 teams left playing for the national championship, trying to practice to prepare for the CFP and dealing with players while you're still in the middle of trying to win a national championship, dealing with players telling you they're leaving when there are games left to be played? This basic fundamental thing has to change as soon as possible, yes?
No question. Can you imagine being Penn State right now and your number 2 quarterback is gone?
Right, yeah. Yep.
He's gone.
Yeah.
He's got to do what's best for him. I get that. And people say, oh, you got to do what's best for the team. Oh, no, hell, that's been gone. Like, we're out of our minds. We need to stop living in this fantasy land of 1984, 83 when I was in college and you were like, I'm going to do what's best for the team. I want to win the national championship. All that's out the window. Right now, the whole focus is I'm going to take care of me and my family, and the only chance that I have is to be on the field so I can get more money. And no, I can't imagine in January practicing and then coming off of that field preparing for a college football playoff game, knowing what's at stake and have to go right in and look at portal film because that's what they got to do.
Yep.
So, and then they have to be because you cannot be unprepared and not be able to fill that position. And let's be honest, you can't bring a kid in August and think he's going to be up to speed on your, particularly offense. Like, I don't think people realize how difficult that is. When Witt said we need a plug-and-play offense, I don't think people understand what that means. It means Andy Ludwig's offense was the West Coast offense. I grew up in it, love it. It is so technical. It is so detailed that any mistake can throw off the details. And, you know, in the pass game, any mistake in that can really just screw up the whole play. Well, now you have to be more simplistic because your turnover pieces are high. Just think, if you don't get that kid in there by the spring, you better get – sometimes your best players are going to be showing up July 1st. And that sucker better be up to speed to play or you're out looking for a job. That's the reality of it. That's the cold reality of it. So if your system – takes time to learn, and if you look in NFL and pro teams that run the West Coast system, it takes you time. You look at Worthy with the Kansas City Chiefs, the receiver. It's going to take him a minute to where that speed actually matters because he's got to study. That offense is not like so simplistic. You can walk in and look at the book one time a week. No, you got to study that book every day, every single day. And if you can't get an NFL player to do it and up to speed when they have nothing else to do, there's no way you can get a college kid to do it.
Let me move over, and we are catching up with Guy Holliday, longtime college football coach, played in the NFL, played college football back in the day, spent time with both Utah and BYU on their staff. And you referenced Andy Ludwig, who hopefully and should always be remembered for what a phenomenal job he did while he was here. And I don't know, Guy, it feels like the offensive coordinator is always the dude who falls on the sword. Just feels like he's the guy that takes the brunt of the stuff. But Andy, of course, exits the program. Jason Beck has now been hired as the offensive coordinator. I'd be curious to get your take on Utah's new OC.
I love him. I worked with him. I watched him take Tanner Mangum at BYU, and Christian Stewart. Both times Taysom Hill got hurt. I think at that time we were 5-0 when Taysom went down the first year, and he brought Christian Stewart on, walk on, completely changed the offense. And that was the year we played University of Utah in the bowl game. And I think everybody remembers that was a shootout. Yeah, it took an amazing comeback to make it a close game. But when Jason Beck left BYU, Tanner Mangum was never the same player. And that speaks volumes about him. He took Christian Stewart, a walk-on, that first year and made him a player. A walk-on, made him a player. What I know about Jason is he's super smart, super intellectual, and his ability to communicate with a quarterback is exceptional. It's exceptional, in my opinion. He went to Virginia. They took a transfer quarterback. He became a player, went to Syracuse, made a quarterback a player. What's the first thing he does at University of New Mexico? Makes that kid a player, okay? That speaks volumes about him. We can go on play calling ability and all that. Let me tell you something. Play calling is great when everything is equal, but in college football, it comes down to players. The best players will win games. The best players will win games, and I think they've done a really good job hitting the road recruiting, and they hired one hell of a recruiter in Marky Atawaya. I'm telling you, that guy can recruit. I was with him. I love him. He's like a brother to me, and I think he'll do a hell of a job. And if a kid gets out of Hawaii and doesn't come to Utah, and Lou has done a fabulous job, but as much as I love Lewis Powell, he is no Marky Atawaya in Hawaii. I can tell you that. And that guy's a living legend there.
Very interesting stuff. Yeah, and, obviously that pipeline is something that both Utah and BYU and other schools, too, have capitalized on that talent. Let me ask you about Jason's quarterback, who is transferring to Utah, coach, and that, of course, is Devin Dampier. And Isaac Wilson announces that he will be back on campus, too. I don't know what the status is of Isaac's health. He had the knee injury, but I would imagine the idea is to have those two battle it out and maybe some other additions to that room as well. But what do you know about Devin Dampier, and what do you make about the potential of what the Utah quarterback position could look like this upcoming season?
Well, he's from here in Arizona, in Phoenix, so I know a little bit more about him. Let me tell you about, before we go there, Kyle Whittingham will always believe, and he made me a firm believer in, you need a quarterback that can hurt you with his legs. We know Dampier can do that, and that's critical. And if you think about it, Tyler Huntley hurts you with his legs. Cam Rising, when healthy, he hurts you with his legs. If you Google and look at the majority of deep balls completed and deep passes, it is mainly done by extending the play, because that's when coverage breaks down. Okay, so I think that's critical. I think Isaac Wilson will prosper under Jason Beck, because Jason will reach him, make it simple, and you're going to have an offense that does what the kid can do. He is a spread offense guy. Sometimes we all get caught up and what what this recruit is rated and so on and so forth, that's irrelevant if he doesn't fit your scheme. That's all irrelevant. So I think he fits the scheme, and I would not be surprised to see them excel on offense.
Well, that's some real exciting stuff. Last thing, guys, since I set you loose, because I have not spoken to you since the announcement was made that Morgan Scalley once again has been installed as the coach in waiting. He had that moniker once upon a time, and it was taken from him, and he was asked to do some things, and I can't speak to that process. I was not a part of it. Apparently, he did what he needed to do and received that promise back. So whenever Kyle is done, it will be Morgan. Just wanted to get your take on that before we set you loose on this Wednesday.
Morgan's very intellectual, very good defensive mind. We all know. I think the key, and Morgan is one of the smartest people I know. The key is going to be, and he's learning from a great head coach, how does he handle all the responsibilities of being the head coach? Because it's not simple anymore. He's been a defensive coordinator and a very good one for so long. And now you're adding in, you got to handle so much more as a head coach, especially with the portal, and you got to re-recruit your players every year. He's going to have to make adjustments to that because Morgan he's a grinder now, and he's a great human being and understands people. And so it'll just be held he's got to hold the standard. As Witt says, the standard is the standard. And Morgan won't have a problem in doing that. And he's just got to figure out how to manage the responsibilities of college head coach, which is so much different than an NFL head coach. NFL head coach, how many of them stand on the sideline with the play sheet calling plays? Man, that's hard to do in college football. You don't see very many of them doing it because they have so many other responsibilities.
Well, Guy, I appreciate the time. We miss you up here. You were always one of my favorite interviews. If you ever want to hop on the show for any reason, please reach out, and we'll probably bug you again in not too long, okay? Happy holidays, sir. Right. Be well, okay?
I appreciate you all. You all have happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's. I always love Utah, man. It's a great place.
All right. The great Guy Holiday spent a number of years with both Brigham Young and the University of Utah coaching wide receivers. He is now settled down in Arizona, where he continues to work with and develop young high school players to try to help them go on to college football. Do appreciate Guy's time. Truly, he was kind of like Sharif. Anytime he spoke, you wanted to listen to what he had to say. He is on Twitter, on social media. You can get him at Eagle88Me. Coach Holiday, my guy. All right, let's bring in Ryan from the Dish Pros. Also my guy. Give him a call at 801-424-DISH. Affordable options for internet, cable television, and your wireless situation at 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
Hey, Spence, you're my guy.
There we go.
Put it that way.
Appreciate that.
Love you. You're such an awesome guy, and we love having you in the office, and I feel like I'm just hanging out with my buddies. That's the best part about it.
For sure.
Guys, listen, we had some pretty crazy rate increases come across the board. If you're a YouTube TV customer, you're like, okay, I'm going to this. Did you see this rate increase? It's a big one. Guys, you want to pay more, and these rate increases are going to continue. This regulation stuff that the government's the FCC is going to enforce, it's going to make those bills go way up. Here's the thing. It got this promotion right now, and I've got it stacked. And I'm not going to have it for very much longer, but you get the 2-year offer, 2-year price guarantee. You get all the credits. It's cheaper than YouTube TV with just that, but we'll throw in the Netflix offer, which you get Netflix, the ad-free version, which is worth like $370+ free for 2 years. You get some extra movie channels we'll throw on top of that, plus the internet JCWs. And guys, here's the thing. Biggest DVR out there. It is lightning fast. I have used YouTube TV. I've used the cable box. I've used the DirecTV boxes. I've used all the different streaming stuff, and I kind of giggle because the Hopper is just faster. And I'm a DVR guy. I'm when I watch a football game, there's a slow running play. I'll skip between the plays. You can skip. If you skip too far, you can skip back 10 seconds. It's just super easy to use. It's fast. It auto-records your team's games for you, auto-records the locals.
it'll auto hop commercials, and that auto hop feature is remarkable. It doesn't get talked about a lot because the broadcasters won't let them actually have commercials where they talk about skipping commercials because that's not what they want. In fact, a bunch of them even sued Dish over this. And so, listen, take advantage of the cool things that are out there. Pay a lower, get a better system, get a bunch of free stuff from us. We'll have you installed for free. And ask about the internet solutions. Internet was another big one. Fiber customers got like a 20% rate increase. If you haven't noticed your bill went up that much, you can call us and maybe even use the same fiber you're currently using, just pay a different provider and pay much less. Or look at other options that are out there. One of the providers that this is the one I've been using for 2 years, they'll give you a free 50-inch TV. Okay, free stuff. Call up. Take advantage of it. Let us upgrade you. I can get you free iPhone 16 Pro or Samsung S24. Lower your phone bill $20-$30 a month, and you'll use the same cell towers. I'm not kidding. You get all the services, everything you're used to. Just pay less money, get new stuff. Call us. Let us hook you up. 424-DISH. It's 801-424-DISH.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Pros. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. 5 o'clock hour of the program comes your next right here on ESPN 700. All right, what's going on? It is the Drive at 5 right here on a Wednesday afternoon. You are halfway through your work week. You are one day closer to the weekend. You're one day closer to the starts of Week 16 of the NFL, one day closer to the start of the 12-team CFP. Bowl season in college football is rolling along. Of course, kind of one eye on that BYU Colorado game, the Alamo Bowl coming up on December the 28th. BYU still has a little bit of football left to play after an excellent 10-win season for Kalani and his squad. Western Kentucky has a 14-7 lead over James Madison in the Boca Raton Bowl. Some college football action tonight. So NFL Week 16 will get rolling on Thursday night. Don't forget, we are your home of pro football here in the market. It's going to be the Broncos and the Chargers coming up on Thursday. The Chargers are a 3-point favorite at home, although Justin Herbert is questionable. I want to remind you guys that coming up tomorrow and Friday, it's two of my favorite days of the year as far as what we're able to do to help out those in need this holiday season. I've been doing remotes at the road home for this will be my 19th year and would love to see you guys. And we're actually running behind on donations. So if you have not listened all day today, please listen to this. If you're looking for a way to give back this holiday season, if you're looking for a way to help those in need this holiday season, we are looking for blankets, coats, shoes, hats, and gloves. You can drop off the donations at any Rocky Mountain Chevy dealer. You can visit ESPN700sports.com for dealer locations. Spread the warmth and help others find their home this holiday season. We will be at the road home both tomorrow and Friday, broadcasting live, trying to ask for donations, trying to raise money for our good friends at the road home so they can help people out in need this holiday season. I don't have to tell you, man, if you guys are driving around downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, just look out the window. And it's not just Salt Lake. It's all over the country, but the road home does some phenomenal work, and I always appreciate being a part of their radiothon. And we'll have all of our stations, our Broadway media stations will be out there, including us here at ESPN 700. So, again, check out ESPN700sports.com for dealer locations, and you can drop off any donation at any Rocky Mountain Chevy dealer looking for blankets, coats, shoes, hats, and gloves this holiday season. So, bulk of the show today has been either college or pro football. We did do a little NBA Cup because you guys watched last night. I know you did. The Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo, they win the NBA Cup last night in Las Vegas. It was kind of an odd thing because the celebration was awkward. The players didn't know what to do after the final buzzer. I watched through the final horn intentionally to see what the celebration will look like. I'll tell you what, it was actually kind of cute. Like, Giannis was excited, such a sweet guy, and that's what you love about Giannis because he was unstoppable, and Milwaukee just summarily dismissed OKC. But if the NBA wants this thing to stick, they've got to fix the atmosphere. I'm not sure how many of you guys watched, probably not many, but it felt like a very Super Bowl all-star game crowd. You could just see on TV a bunch of suits, bunch of sponsors, bunch of TV partners. Like, if the NBA really wants this to feel like a championship environment, if they want this to feel like a March Madness Final Four environment, they've got to do something different with the surrounding and the environment. And it's not hard to do. For all of the things that the NBA does well, there are so many things where they're just asleep at the wheel. They just don't pay attention. They're lazy. And hopefully, if they get some feedback on how bad it looked on television, I mean, it would have been really easy to do. And I think it's really easy to essentially implement and execute an initiative that if your team, okay, let's say the Jazz this year, somehow, some way, Johnny Juzang just went off, scored 60 a night. And the Jazz somehow, some way found their way to the NBA Cup. And the NBA announces, hey, we're going to bring 10,000 Jazz fans to Vegas. We're going to give them tickets to the game. We're going to pay for their accommodation, or 5,000 or whatever the number is. How many of you would have loved to do that this year during the holiday season, get away from the cold, even though it was like 52 again today and sunny? But let's say the Jazz sent out a release like, hey, if you're a Jazz fan, okay, enter to win an opportunity to go to Vegas and see the NBA Cup semifinal and final. And we're going to pay for your hotel. We're going to pay for your airfare. We're going to give you a couple of $100 in chips. You can go throw some cards. We're going to pay for your food. You can go to the game for free. Here's a $50 meal voucher. Like, people would be genuinely excited to do that. And the NBA doesn't need the revenue from the 5,000 fans they send from each team. So, look, if you've ever seen the surroundings in Milwaukee, the Fear the Deer crowd when they won the championship, like, Buck fans are really awesome. OKC fans remind me actually a little bit of Jazz fans. If you ever watch an OKC game on TV, when they're really good, it looks and feels a lot like it does when the Jazz are good. To have 5,000 Bucks fans and 5,000 Thunder fans last night in that arena in Vegas would have been an absolute game changer. And at least from a consumer perspective, if you're watching it on television, at least it would have seemed interesting. But last night, it just wasn't. And neither were the semifinals. It felt like an it felt like a Super Bowl or an all-star crowd. That's what it felt like last night. So, if the NBA claims this is their solution to the midseason doldrums and the lack of interest from regular season basketball, they got to improve the surroundings. They got to improve the product. Otherwise, this thing is going to die on the vine, because last night was entirely lacking passion, lacking inspiration, lacking any feel that anything was on the line. And by the way, when the final buzzer sounded, the players genuinely looked confused. Like, do we jump on each other? Do we celebrate? Do we go say hi to the crowd? Oh, wait, there's no fans here. Trophy was brought over. Giannis was like, do I do the soccer thing now? And that's what they did, by the way. The soccer, like, let's lift the trophy like it's a soccer tournament. This thing has got a long way to go before anybody gives a rip. That's my point. All right, so if you missed it from earlier today, we kind of discussed this with Andy Larson. All right. Wrapping it up for a Wednesday edition of the program. Don't forget we're live on site tomorrow and on Friday at the Road Home, so come on by and say hi. Visit ESPN700sports.com for dealer locations. We're looking for you guys to head on home tonight, go through some of your old things, see if you have any extra blankets, coats, shoes, hats, or gloves, and then drop them off at any Rocky Mountain Chevy dealer. I want to give a shout-out to my guy, Nate Orchard, as well as Jake Weber, Advanced Window Products, #1 rated window company in Utah. Locally owned in sales and installation or in-house. No middleman markup. Bottom line is this. They're offering their winter football special right now where you can save $2,500 when you purchase 10 windows or more. So beat the rush and order today from the factory to your front door in 8 weeks or less. Give them a call at 801-850-9100 or visit them online at advancedwindows.com. My good friends at Advanced Window Products. Who wants to go watch the Utes? That's right. Utah men's basketball, Big 12, is right around the corner. So text Utes right now to 33986 for your chance to win tickets for the Utah men's basketball games coming up during the Big 12 season. Got a win last night against Florida A&M. Solid non-con. As far as the record goes, they haven't played very many good teams, but we'll see how the Big 12 thing goes. So text Utes right now. 33986 is where you text Utes to, 33986. So there you go. I got most of the house cleaning out of the way. All right, Porter has elected to leave us. He is gone. He is leaving and maybe coming back, question mark?
I'll be back.
Where are you going, by the way? Care to share with the listeners?
I have a few adult things I gotta take care of.
Like triple X rated, like triple X adult stuff. Or?
Not like that.
Okay, good. Because
maybe we'll see.
I'm not judging.
We'll see how the few days goes.
I'm not judging. I'm just asking. It's not my place.
I was in Vegas last weekend, Spence.
Oh, okay. Sounds like we need to catch up then.
No, but some errands to do, some stuff. Listen, when I work the radio show, it's every afternoon. We usually come in, noon or so and get everything ready to go. A lot of the things that I have to do during weekdays just don't ever happen because I'm doing sports radio. So taking care of a few of those things. May make some trips down to the desert, see some family, but we shall see. A few days off and catching up on some stuff.
Well, that sounds like an excellent plan. So Porter's off for the next couple of days. Olivia's going to be holding the fort down. Once again, I will be live on site at the Road Home tomorrow and Friday, so not back in studio until Monday. So, Porter, even though you are ghosting us, no cap.
No cap.
As the kids would say. What comes our way on a Thursday edition of the show?
Thursday edition of the show, as we do each and every Thursday, a big edition of the Big Hour. Gordon Monson, Craig Bolerjack, each of those guys will stop by. And I think apropos, as we're at the Road Home, right, you've done I don't know how many broadcasts from the Road Home, and those guys have done the same. And we'll catch up with Richard Smitty Smith as well. Smitty was really wanting to be down there at the Road Home. So shout out to Smitty, not only being involved, but going out of his way to do so. Hopefully we have some good returns at the Road Home tomorrow.
That will be awesome to have those guys down there. Whenever I see the Boca Raton Bowl, I can only think of Del Boca Vista and Seinfeld every single year. So college football tonight, James Madison, Western Kentucky. And then obviously NBA is going to be back, including the Jazz tomorrow. So enjoy it. And before we catch a break, got to tell you about my friends at Prize Picks. Okay, here's the deal. It is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Right now, they're offering a promotion where you can literally win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's very easy to do. All you do is pick more or less on 2 players, and you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. They're giving away free money, so go get it by downloading the Prize Picks app today and using the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download that Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks run your game all season long. Special thank you today. Dave Bartu, Neil Smith, Andy Larson, and Guy Holliday. For any of the sound you may have missed, website is ESPN700sports.com. Our station app is the ESPN 700 app, available in the App Store or the Google Play Store. And then for what we do in our space, 4 hours every single day, our podcast is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, Say nice things. Give us all the stars. You will be eternally blessed. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying good night. Enjoy your Wednesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Thursday drive. As always, you can find it right here on ESPN.